Welcome back to HBP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harris, and thanks for joining us again. Today I'm joined by Cam Riehl, our resident all-around expert. Cam, how you doing?
It's nice to have an official title, Rich.
Yes. Mine is asshole boss. So today it's going to be an all NBA show because there's not much going on in college basketball right now. Teams are just starting to resume practicing and getting ready for the season. Of course, the NBA training camps open next week. Preseason starts, I believe, on October 4th or October 5th, I believe, which will be next week as well. So it's all going to be all NBA today. So, yeah, and we had huge news. But before we don't do the college notebook, I just want to say next week we'll be doing our show will be focused. We will resume our college conference previews. And next week we will do the Mountain West Conference, the West Coast Conference, plus the best of the rest in terms of mid-majors. And that this will be the last mid-major conferences we will be covering. So that's why we're going to do the best of the rest, that we haven't gone into detail on those conferences. And then we'll be moving on to the Big Six. I forget the exact order, but I'm talking Pac-12, Big East, blah, blah, blah. All right. So how you doing, Cam?
I'm doing good, Rich. You know, just got home and I checked my phone and I saw that we got a little trade news to talk about today.
Yes, and that will lead off our NBA notebook, evaluating that 3-team trade that sent Dame Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks. So let me run over the details. And by the way, I want to say for our NBA notebook today, we're gonna mix in our mailbag, because basically 2 questions that we got also relate to 2 topics that we had in the notebook. So we'll kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone and deal with the mailbag during the notebook. So let's go over that Dame Lillard trade. It was interesting, and it's kind of funny. One of the questions we got, which we'll get to, but it kind of it very much related to Dame Lillard's trade value, and I actually believe our listener was pretty much on the mark. But so here's what we got. We have Jrue Holiday going to Portland, along with an unprotected 2029 first-round pick, along with a swap rights to Milwaukee's 2028 and 2030 first rounders. So that's interesting right there. Why I say it's interesting is because Portland was apparently asking for 3 or 4 first rounders. So one could say they, depending on those swaps, they'll probably work in their favor. So you could say they got 3 in this draft, but not really. Maybe 2. You know what I'm saying? Now, that's not the end of it. They also, from the Phoenix Suns, who got involved in this deal, they also got center DeAndre Ayton and rookie forward Toumani Camara from the Suns. Now, going to Phoenix is center Yusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, guard Keon Johnson. Both of them were first-round draft picks, as well as Grayson Allen is coming over from Milwaukee to Phoenix. And lastly, of course, Milwaukee just gets Lillard. So I have my feelings on who won this trade. I'm going to open up our depth charts, but so while I'm doing that, what do you think of this deal?
I think it's interesting, Rich. To me, it says a lot about what the kind of, you have to address the fact that, and I'm already seeing that Jimmy Butler has posted a video talking about tampering.
Yes.
I feel like that's kind of hard to argue with, the perception of, the Blazers almost having to trade him to the Heat. I don't know. It shows, I think more than likely one of the sticking points with the Heat negotiation is what to do with Nurkic. And it's something I've been thinking about most of the summer. It's like always trying to figure out trades that worked around, Portland being able to dump both Dame's contract and throw in Nurkic's huge deal. That basically, like, whichever team could take both or could figure out a 3-team trade that allowed the Blazers to dump Nurkic's value was probably going to win out. And it looks like this is how they figured it out. The Suns are basically just going to take on that Nurkic contract and get some depth pieces in exchange for Ayton and Kamara. Like as far as who won the trade, it kind of comes down to me, like how you perceive DeAndre Ayton. Do you think that he can bump up to a true like all-star level center in a system that he is more a part of the offense?
It's true.
I think that's something that we haven't gotten to see a whole lot of in his game. I think when he first came into the league, he showed off that, and in college too, he showed off that post presence. He showed off some shooting touch, kind of like a Joel Embiid light type of offensive game.
Yeah.
I think if you like his upside with more of an offensive role, I could see Portland really liking this deal, especially factoring that he fits more in line with Scoot Henderson's timeline, more in line with the rest of their young core.
Yeah.
That being said, though,
go ahead.
If I'm the Suns, how do I not get Drew Holiday? What is the motivation for Portland to get Holiday?
I don't think they could have taken his contract.
Well, they probably could have with dumping Ayton's deal. I don't know. I think it's interesting value.
Yeah, but you can't take Nurkic's contract and Holiday's contract.
Yes. Ultimately, yeah. That's the issue. I think, it's a funky trade. I love what this does to the Bucks' upside, and just for that reason, I think that they win this deal personally. Especially with just already the kind of discussion that's going on about how long Giannis is really committed to the team and the timelines that they're looking at. I think adding Lillard now pretty clearly makes them my title favorite in the East. You've got a supreme shooter, a supreme ball handler to pair with Giannis. And now you can really lean into that Giannis Dame pick and roll. And that's a scary image in my mind. I really think the Bucks propelled themselves up out of like that questionable contender status to like grade A, we're here to win a title. If we don't win a title, we're in real trouble. Like that's the expectation this year, 100%.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just feel like, to me, the Suns, I don't get it. I don't get it for the Suns. What's in it for them?
Well, I'll explain it to you because I kind of like what they did the most. Now, I'm thinking a little more short term here. Short term. But, this was a team that basically had, two of their 3 stars were, injury prone and in their 30s. And this team really had really, really crap depth. Now with what they've added, okay, their depth chart looks nice. Eric Gordon can slide in behind Devin Booker at point guard because Grayson Allen can now back up Bradley Beal. So if either of those guys miss time, they have quality backups. They still probably going to start Josh Okogie at the 3, But now they have some other talented players that they can use at that spot in Nasir Little or Keon Johnson, who still are young, still have upside. Little probably gives you the most offense. Johnson probably gives you the most defense, and Okogie is probably somewhere in between. Keon Johnson, though, if he ever develops a jump shot, he could be a really valuable wing. Now behind Kevin Durant, you have Diop, Bates Diop, and Watanabe. Not great. I mean, you don't want Durant to miss a lot of time, but for a few games here and there, they have some serviceable backups. And to me, Nurkic is a wash with Ayton. And I actually think a better fit for this Phoenix team because he's not going to complain about not getting the ball. He's just going to do what you ask. He's a better passer than Ayton. Ayton was a pain in the butt. I think Phoenix wins by just getting rid of him, personally. So now I agree with what you say about Milwaukee, that they probably now surge into, the top spot in, the favorite to win the East. However, you look at their depth chart, which was already shady. I mean, wow. They either have to start Pat Connaughton or Malik Beasley at the 2. Okay. Their starting lineup looks great, except for the fact that Lillard, Middleton, Antetokounmpo, and Lopez are all up there in years. And Middleton may never be the same. Lopez is definitely on the downside. Lillard actually is going to hit the downside sooner than later. And you got to pay him that huge contract. But even beside that, this season, right now, on their depth chart, I have Andre Jackson penciled in as their backup point guard. The other options are their two-way guys, Lindell Wigginton and Ty Washington. Or they have Exhibit 10, they have Gortman from Overtime Elite. And they also have AJ Green. Okay, but none of those guys have any NBA experience, really. And then backing up Middleton, God forbid he goes down again, you either have Beauchamp or you have the rookie Chris Livingston. So this team cannot afford to lose anybody, and God knows what they're going to do when those guys sit down. I really think, again, I said this last week, sign Cameron Payne now. Now, if they sign Cameron Payne, I think the whole look of this team changes dramatically because you're no longer worried about what happens if Dame Lillard goes down or what have you. But, they got to get a decent point guard in there in case anybody gets hurt. But, okay, so they're definitely thinking short term. And what I'm worried about is when that contract kicks in, all these guys are older. I don't know if they really have made Giannis happy. I mean, yes, they might win the title this year, but then, Middleton, none of these guys are getting any younger. And so Giannis still might book. He might say, well, I'm not sticking around with these old guys. I'm going to go somewhere else. So, all right, so let's talk about Portland. And that's their grade's going to be incomplete until we figure out they figure out what they want to do with Drew Holiday, which is most likely trade him because otherwise Scoot Henderson is, if you're going to go with this young rebuild, and I wouldn't be surprised if they also try to get rid of Jeremy Grant, who they overpaid. Great player. I love Jeremy Grant, but I still think they overpaid him. But so and I think Drew, the obvious landing spot. Now, this one, I don't know what Portland's motivation would be, but the Sixers would definitely want Drew Holiday. And he and Harden make about the same amount of money. So they could just do one-on-one right now, and the contracts would match out, and there'd be no problem. But somewhere, Portland now, you look at their team, again, they're starting 5. Well, I mean, they're going in the right direction, but they're not going to win a lot this year, especially if they get rid of Holiday and don't get much in return. And they still have pieces they have to figure out. I mean, they really don't have a backup center. They really don't have, once they trade Holiday, they won't have a backup point guard. They're really kind of hurting at the wing spot. I mean, unless you think Rupert's ready to play, but he's not. So yeah, Portland's definitely going long term. So it's going to be hard to grade them right now. But I don't think, given that they held the Heat up and the Heat was apparently offering like 3 first-rounders or 2 first-rounders, and they were planning on getting another first-rounder as part of the Hero deal. So they were going to trade Hero to somebody else to bring in a 3rd first-rounder from somebody, and they were going to throw in a couple second-rounders, plus they were going to throw in one of their 2 or maybe both of their talented players, plus they were going to throw in Lowry and Robinson. So, compared to that, did they do any better?
I think so.
It depends what they get for Holiday.
Yep.
Yeah. That's, and I assume they think they're going to get more for Holiday.
Oh, they certainly will. I mean, granted, Drew Holiday regressed a little bit last season, but at his age, 33. You have to expect that. Yeah, you have to expect that. But I will say, I think his trajectory can go. I think he can maintain a higher level than a guy like Lowry or Chris Paul can at the same age.
Oh, most definitely.
Because of his value as a defender, primarily. But he's a solid shooter. He's a solid pick and roll player. He's a good passer. Right? There's no like one part of his game that's really going to regress heavily just off of his age and losing a little bit of a step. He's going to be fine. And there will be a contending team that is more than willing to make a swap for him.
Yeah.
My immediate idea.
I wonder if Indiana would be interested, but he makes almost about 18 more million a year than Buddy Hield.
Let me throw you this one, Rich. The Lakers basically signed D'Angelo Russell to a larger contract than he would get from anybody else just so that they could trade him later. I would not be shocked at all if that's exactly the deal that gets done. Throw D'Angelo Russell and a couple firsts.
What would Portland gain from getting D'Angelo Russell?
They don't have to gain anything. If you're throwing in first and I take on a couple years of D'Lo, that's great for me.
Right.
Give me some draft equity.
Right. And that might be what the Sixers have to do, believe it or not. They may, if they want Drew Holiday, they may have to send Harden and a pick or 2.
Yeah.
to get rid of Harden.
Because ultimately, if you're Portland, you're taking on a guy like Drew Holiday or Harden. You're not taking them to keep them. You're taking them to move them somewhere else so that you can get a little extra value.
Right.
Yeah, I think I would look towards the Lakers. I would look towards Minnesota pretty heavily. Granted, they're running very low on pick equity, but they need a point guard desperately. Like you said, Philly is definitely worth looking at. And then, you might find another team in the mix, kind of in the middle of the pack that says, okay, well, maybe we just need a point guard. You could look at a team like Toronto. You could look at a team like
Boston has a lot of picks
totally
playing around too. They might be interested, but I don't know how they would work it out salary wise.
I think about maybe Orlando, maybe Indiana, like you mentioned, but teams that have picks that feel like maybe they can make another step up in the rankings, and they just want a little more experience.
Yeah.
And granted, like the deal would change a little bit depending on which of those teams are in the running, but yeah, I mean, now that you mentioned Boston, I mean, talk about a good landing spot for Brogdon, a team that doesn't really care too much about the health. We'll take Brogdon 2 firsts, for Drew Holiday. I think that's a pretty favorable deal. There's going to be a bidding war for him. He's still a really solid player. He's just probably not your 3rd best guy on a championship team anymore.
No, I don't think so. But, it would be good for him because I think part of the reason why, we saw him struggle defensively on Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. But I think part of the reason is he got used too hard in Milwaukee. I think, these guys, once they get over 30, you can't play these guys 35 minutes a game anymore.
He really had to pick up a lot of offensive slack too with Middleton's injury. And I think that was a part of the regression we were seeing.
Right. And that's not really his forte.
No.
Right. All right. So I want to bring up our first mailbag question from someone named Jimmy who said, and this deals with Dame. We got this question before the trade went down. So I just thought it was interesting. He said it wasn't long ago that the Raptors traded DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a first-round pick for Kawhi Leonard. I think smart teams would use a similar approach when looking to acquire Dame or Harden. It seems like the Sixers and Blazers are thinking they're going to get Gobert, a Gobert-like or a Durant-like haul, but those trades were flat out crazy and it ain't happening. So I think he wasn't too far off because you look at, what Portland got was they got two, solid players and they got a first round pick and two pick swaps. So I think he was, right on. You're not going to see these 4 first round picks for somebody who's in their 30s you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
It shouldn't happen. And I think this particular instance, there's a difference in positions too. I think there's still there's a bias, and probably rightfully so, for taller guys. Right? Why should I pay so much for a point guard when every team in the league has guards? It's almost like the running back equivalent of football in the NFL. You're not going to pay this much for a guy that's going to be a liability defensively in a lot of ways, or is just as prone to injury as anybody else. So it's there's still a little bit of bias towards the big guys. But granted, the Gobert trade was simply insane, no matter how you slice it.
I think the Durant trade was pretty off the wall too.
Yeah, but at least you're trading for an MVP, for a former MVP,
right?
And that's
Gobert was definitely worse.
Yeah, that trading for an MVP.
And then when you throw in the fit, it even makes it was even more mind-boggling.
Even worse. Yeah.
But
when you throw in, when you talk about the Durant trade, you have to remember that this guy's going to end up being I would say at least a top 12 all-time player.
Yeah.
I think that goes without saying. A lot of people would say higher. When a guy comes available like that in a trade, you got to have to give up a whole lot.
Right.
I think similarly
Rudy Gobert that's just not going to be. He's not going to go down in history like that.
No. Absolutely not. No.
He's going to fit in wherever Dwight Howard, he's going to be in that range,
Mm-hmm. That being said, the reason that Portland didn't take that Heat deal is because, when you really break it down, it's okay, I'm getting some Miami Heat picks, which are never that great. It's not like they're picking in the lottery in between their, in their downtimes. They're still a good team. They're in the worst division in probably all of the NBA.
Right.
So, they're not going to be that horrible, even without getting Lillard. They're still going to probably win their division. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting a couple picks that aren't going to be lottery picks. I'm going to get, Tyler Hero, who has an injury problem. Let's start there.
Well, they didn't want Hero, but Miami was going to use Hero to get draft capital.
Yeah, but then too, if I don't want him, who else is going to give you the draft capital for him?
Well, they didn't want him because they already had Sharp and Simmons. Nothing against Hero. At least that's my understanding.
I think that's part of it, though. It's you guys are so my thinking is okay, Miami, you're so ready to trade him how much do you really like him? I feel like you would be excited to bring him back this year almost, you know?
Right. Right.
And then Jovic, it's like I see the potential there, but he didn't crack their rotation this previous season in their
I
playoff
think he will
run.
this year. I think he
He
will.
will. He should, but it's like they didn't trust him enough in the playoff spots to play him over undrafted,
No, well,
like
he was
literally like
19, he was
5, 6
19 years
undrafted
old.
guys.
He was 19 years old.
But he just looked great in the World Cup, and they're like
Right. Well,
not
that was a
playing
year.
him.
That's almost a year later.
I mean, totally. I mean,
Well, he's
he's
also
just
in his
playing in the
comfort
World Cup.
zone. He's also in his comfort zone, playing under the
Yeah,
rules he grew up with. And
I don't
anyway,
know, but comparatively, I get one first round pick in 29, which with the trajectory, the ages, that's going to look pretty good from the Bucks,
I think
especially
so. I
unprotected.
think so.
I get a shot at maybe 3 really good picks, maybe. You know, granted, that's really nice too, though, because the swaps, it lets you change your timeline. You're not dependent on your team being bad. And then, Ayton was the number 1 pick. He probably shouldn't have been the number 1 pick, but he's
No.
got that kind of potential. Like he really does. It's there. We just haven't seen him in a situation where he's asked to do anything other than rebound and dunk and play a little bit of defense here and there. I think
Well,
he has more to give than that. And I get Drew Holiday to flip. I think
okay.
that's
Well, I just want to tell you, I have a source told me today when the trade was announced at Phoenix, in the Phoenix camp, they basically were jumping up and down, ecstatic. Now, I'm thinking, are they really excited about Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, Keon Johnson, Nurkic, or are they really excited that DeAndre Ayton is packing his bags and getting out of town?
It's probably a combination of all the above. I don't know. I think these guys are still people, and they have ambitions. And if I was the number 1 pick and I knew I had this potential and I wanted to do more, but I'm repeatedly told by staff that I don't have space to do that, I would probably be pretty disgruntled too. I probably wouldn't be as competitive too. Like it's one thing to say like, oh, why can't you just go and win? It's like, no, this guy wants to be an all-star. This guy wants to be the guy. That's what he got drafted to be. That's what he was building towards in a lot of ways. And then, the team keeps changing, the schemes keep changing, and his role never does.
Well, you know what? For a big man, I'll tell you where it starts. Your path to the All-Star game starts by doing 3 things that he doesn't do: rebound, block shots, and play defense. And he's mediocre at all 3. Probably he's mediocre at all 3. So he's really an offensive guy. And we know that the NBA is not going to design, not many NBA teams are going to design their offense around a non-passing 7-footer.
Granted, I don't think you're going to do that if you have Chris Paul, Devin Booker, throwing Kevin Durant. Like when you have so many other better offensive options, no, you're not. But I think Ayton probably could have or would have built that offensive role had Chris Paul not come to the Suns.
I'm not questioning his ability on offense. I'm questioning his ability to do everything else.
Do the other things else.
Right.
Yeah. I think he's totally capable. I mean, we saw it in their finals run, that one seat, like he was defending Giannis. He was defending, like, I mean, heck, he was the reason that they made it to the finals run. I mean, he had the tip dunk that sealed it in multiple games. I mean, they wouldn't have gotten that far without Ayton. I don't know. I think he's almost become underrated in my mind, but I think part of it is self-inflicted.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he's just he's an interesting player. I really like that fit for Portland too. I mean,
Yeah, it's certainly a better place for him.
totally.
Yeah, I think he will probably be the guy for at least be their number one option for the next couple of years, and then I think as those guards develop, then it's going to be probably a little different story. But yeah,
Yeah. Again, too, though, like he's been up above 10 rebounds per game his whole career. Like, is he an elite rebounder? No, he's not Dwight Howard. He could be. I think that's what's frustrating about him. It's like he could be at 15 a game.
right.
He has the physicality to
I
do it.
guess I don't follow the regular season as closely as I do the playoffs, and it seems like in the playoffs, he's always, getting benched either for not rebounding or for not playing defense or so. All right, a couple other notes I want to bring up that were actually kind of moot after the trade, but we were going to talk about. But I just find it interesting is over the last few days. The Raptors suddenly became the front runners to get Lillard, and then the Bulls got into the mix, and they were going to trade Zach LaVine and some other pieces. And of course, I just wonder if all those rumors I wonder if those rumors were just kind of thrown out there to get somebody to get moving. But that's what we were hearing. Also, interestingly, Drew Holiday, I think, said yesterday or the day before that he had said previously that he wanted to retire as a Milwaukee Buck. And so when he was asked at a recent, by a reporter recently, if he wanted to, because this is his last year of his contract, if he wanted to sign with the Bucks, he said, definitely, I want to come back with the Bucks, I want to retire as a Buck. And a couple of days later, he's gone. So just a couple interesting notes. So the other interesting trade talk that's been coming up this week has really been quiet on the Harden front, but is the Buddy Hield thing. And the Pacers general manager came out yesterday and said that, the Pacers are in no hurry to trade Buddy Hield, and basically even said in so many words that they weren't overly interested in trading Buddy Hield, as if they could work out an extension, blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, there's nothing preventing them from keeping him, even if they don't work out an extension, but I guess they want to get something for him in case he walks, which is a logical thing to do. But interestingly, according to Shams, the leading candidates to get Hield were the Mavericks, the Sixers, and the Bucks. I think the Bucks are probably off out of the market now. The Sixers might not be so much in the market because they might be looking at preferring Drew Holiday. But I want to bring up our second mailbag question was from a Pacers fan, TJ, and he asked, what's your guys' opinion on the trade value of Buddy Hield? I'm seeing debates about whether he's worth a first-round pick or multiple second-rounders. Seems to me a first-rounder is not much to ask for a premier shooter. I couldn't agree more. I would think a first-rounder for Buddy Hield, I think, like if I'm the Sixers, if it would fit under the cap, obviously anybody who gives the Pacers, at this point in time, gives the Pacers a first-rounder is also going to have to send some big-time, well, not big-time contracts. Hield's making about 18 mil. So they're going to have to match that 18 mil. So, for example, I think PJ Tucker and House or Furkan, those contracts, would probably match for like the Sixers. So they're going to have to send some players with them. But a first rounder for Buddy Hield, to me, that seems pretty good deal for if I'm a general manager. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the going rate for shooters that are at such a high level is a first rounder. I totally, yeah, I think that's what it should be. Just trying to look through at some stats here. I think if you're looking at players that shot like a true full percentage, let me pull this up real quick. Hield finished 14th overall in 3-point percentage last season.
Over his
and
career, he's over 40%.
Over his career, let's see. Last season he was up above. Wait, hold on. Leaderboards.
I think he's 40.3.
No, that's active. Yeah, that's active. So his career, he is right now 14th among active NBA players.
Okay.
He's 40.3 from the 3-point line.
Right.
And he's got a much healthier volume than some of the guys on the list, including guys like Bryn Forbes, Doug McDermott.
Right.
Yeah, Seth Curry, Joe Harris. I mean, Luke Kennard. Even his volume is damn near like a Klay Thompson, Michael Porter Jr., or Desmond Bane. He's that type of 3-point shooter, high volume.
Right.
No, I mean, I think to me it's a first rounder, pretty much minimum for him.
No.
I mean, we saw last season, Detroit wanted a first rounder for Bogdanovich, and they couldn't get it. And I think that shows there's a clear difference to me between a Buddy Hield and a Bogdanovich. I think they both have some defensive liabilities, but I think ultimately you're probably a little bit more comfortable with a Buddy Hield who you can hide on guards more effectively than a Bogdanovich. No, I think the first is the minimum for me if I'm Indiana.
I know what this guy, TJ, who wrote to us, I know what he's talking about because I saw one writer, and I can't remember the writer's name. I don't know if it was an Indiana writer or just like a general writer like at The Athletic, but he said there was no way they were going to get a first-round pick for one person. I saw say that they were going to get a first-round pick for Buddy Hield. And I don't know why you would say that, because I think you can.
Totally. I mean, would a team be willing to take 2 seconds if they're taking back a little bit, a lesser player? Sure. But like, if I'm just looking for a pick, I want first.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be hard to move Buddy Hield at $18 million. That's not a lot of money relatively. I mean, it's like $18 million less than Jrue Holiday, and Buddy Hield is not half the player Jrue Holiday is. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jrue Holiday makes twice as much money, but I don't think he's worth twice as much as Buddy Hield.
Yeah, completely.
Right. So our next topic is probably more humorous than anything else, and it has to deal with Kai Jones. For you folks who were listening when we were talking about Summer League, and I told Kai that he should go to Europe and get it over with. Probably wouldn't even fit in over there, but he's on Charlotte's roster and he has a contract and everything, but a reporter named Roderick Boone of the Charlotte Observer thinks that Jones's days in Charlotte are numbered, and he has been a no-show during the players' optional training sessions, and he's called out some of his teammates in social media posts in recent weeks, and he made a series of odd social media posts and Instagram live appearances claiming in one tweet. Are you ready? Are you ready, Cameron? He says he's better than Shaquille O'Neal and LeBron James, and then standing by that statement, apparently he had a chance to walk it back, but didn't. He's only making $3 million this year, and the team has an option on him next year. I think the moral of this story is something that I've always said: do not tweet when you're drunk.
Yeah, man, Rich, it's been a tough week for me and really just a tough summer. As a resident of Kai Jones Island, I bought a timeshare a little too early, and now I can't get out of it. That's the moral of the story. I still like his game. I'd like to see him play more. I agree with him on that note, and I agree on him. I agree with him on absolutely nothing else, including the hair color choice. It's brutal. That being said, Kai Jones, good luck out there, man. If the Hornets don't want you, I don't know who else is gonna want you at this point.
Exactly. Because really, I mean, there are options that there are other options that big are. Of course, the rookie last year, their top pick, Mark Williams, and then they also have Nick Richards, who I believe was a late, very, very late pick a few years ago. And both of those guys are ahead of him on the depth chart. Kai is, a guy who's close to 7 feet, who likes to play like a guard, and he just doesn't have the talent to do so.
Not to mention they have the rights to James Najee, and he's just waiting on a draft and stash. So I mean, the outlook isn't great for Kai Jones. I mean, sure, yeah, he probably wants to be on a different team. He sees the writing on the wall, but
I don't know if saying you're better than Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James is going to have people rushing out to sign you.
It's the wrong kind of confidence.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't pass that one over. Had to bring that one up. All right, so now we'll move on. That ends our NBA Notebook and our mailbag. Thanks for the questions, guys. If you'd like to send us a question, please email it to admin@hoopsprospects.com. We also take questions via social media, on Twitter @hoopsprospects, on Instagram @thehoopsprospects, and on Facebook @hoopspros. By the way, speaking of Twitter, when you have to put whatever you change your name to, and you have to put in parentheses formally blah blah blah, maybe you made the wrong name change. All right, so the next thing before we actually get into our Western Conference preview, I want to bring on our special guest, who is Marko Zarkovic. Wish you could have been there for this one. I did this interview a couple days ago, Cam. We basically talked European basketball, why Team USA did not do so well, what the German team and the Serbian team did do well. He had an interesting comment about the Dream Team, which I won't spoil it for those who want to hear the interview. But and we talked about what Yugoslavia would be like if they had a basketball team, and all kinds of good stuff. So we'll roll that interview right now. Special guest is Marko Zarkovic, the head basketball coach at Telekom Baskets Bonn, their regional team in Germany. And not only is Marko a part of the German BBL system and lives in Germany, but he is also a Serbian native, which gives him a unique perspective on the 2023 FIBA World Cup. Marko, thanks for joining us again. How are you doing?
Thanks for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk hoops with you. I'm doing good. Thanks. How are you?
I've had a crazy day, but other than that, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm glad you gave me a little extra time so I could actually grab a late lunch.
Yeah, that's always important.
Yes, always. I need a full stomach to be relaxed and talk on the show. So I know it's very late in Germany, and the last time we talked, it was also very late. So I'm just guessing, there are certain American college coaches and high school coaches that like to hold their practice like before dawn, like before breakfast. I'm guessing you're not one of those guys.
Yeah, sometimes I am, but these nights I'm more like doing video analysis and things like that, and that's why I'm not sleeping.
Okay, all right. Do you use Synergy or Instat?
We have both. Here at Telekom, and then depends. Sometimes one, sometimes other.
Okay. Cool. All right, so I wanted to talk to you about World Cup because you do have this unique perspective of being in living and being in the country of the team that won it, and coming from the country that was the runner-up. So, how much did the German people get into it, and how widely was it celebrated? Was it something that the whole country was excited about, or not so much?
Well, this is for basketball fan, crazy story, but it's true story. During the finals, German Football Federation announced that they will change the national team coach of their soccer team. Yeah, and because Germany is soccer country and soccer is by far number one sport, everybody by the internet stats went on Google and search what's happening. So basically, that news was, 10 times more popular than news that German basketball national team won the World Cup. So, yeah, it's almost like nothing happened. Outside of the basketball circles, a lot of people don't even know, I think.
Oh my goodness, that is a shame. That is a shame. And I would later on, I want to ask you. I'll tell you how it was over here, and
Okay.
It was also a shame, which I don't quite understand, but we'll get into that. But let's talk about Serbia. How do folks feel about that? Being the runner-up. I know there were extenuating circumstances, so maybe they felt a little disappointed, or were they generally very happy?
Well, disappointed with the result of the finals, but very happy about the overall performance of the team, especially because we were missing some of the main players, and that team was quite young.
Right.
A lot of guys played first time at the big stage. So yeah, altogether, we are very proud of our national team and everything they achieved on this World Cup.
Right. So let's talk about what the team was missing, because that's going to kind of be an integral part of what we talk about later on. Nikola Jokic was out, and Vasily Mikic was out.
Yeah.
Both of them, of course, Jokic, former MVP, probably should have been MVP this year. Also, the key player on the NBA champion Denver Nuggets. And of course, Mikic just signed with the Thunder. And he was your best point guard. So you really didn't have an experienced point guard going into the tournament. Bogdan Bogdanovic did a lot of that. A couple of your other guys picked up the slack. And somebody else got hurt. They had a ruptured kidney.
Yeah, exactly. One of the younger guys at the end of the game against South Sudan got hit, and he barely stayed alive. It was a very serious situation.
Right.
So yeah, and then in the first minutes of the finals, one more player got injured.
Oh, right, ankle.
Yes, and that was also like guy who was really important in rotation.
Yeah, who was that? Because I did.
His last name is Dobric. He just signed with.
Yes.
He played for the Red Star. Experienced EuroLeague player. He signed for Virtus Bologna for the upcoming EuroLeague season.
Okay.
But he was like defensively, especially very important for us. And he was probably the best player in the semifinals against Canada.
Yeah.
So that affected the relation even more. But yeah, altogether, it's not only Jokic and Micic who are missing. There are other guys. Some of them are ex-NBA players. Some of them are still playing in Europe. But yeah, we were missing a lot of people, definitely. So that makes our result even bigger.
I would think just having Jokic, would have been enough to win it all.
Exactly.
And okay, so that's what I was going to say. Is that the prevailing feeling? It's nice to be this far, but So has there been any talk about the Olympics, about those guys in the Olympics?
Yes, of course, and like in US and in all other countries year before, everybody wants to play next summer, but we will see after the season. I'm sure that a lot of things will change depending from what kind of season will teams have. At the moment, everybody says that they want to play, but I think that's only we can discuss it only after the season, and then it's going to be more realistic, I think.
Right. Do people in Serbia, are they a little mad at Jokic, or are they going to be? They're not mad yet, but they will be if he doesn't show up in the Olympics.
That's a tough story. Part of the people are very mad. Part of the people understand him. Obviously, everybody would like to see him every summer in the national team,
right?
But it's not realistic after the long seasons. And yeah, there are people who judge him, and there are people who support him. It's like 50-50, But yeah, we all hope he will play next summer again.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about Serbia. Population is close to 7 million. But just to put that in perspective with the United States, New York City has 8.5 million, and the state I live in, New Jersey, which is right next to New York, 9.2 million people, and we're one of 50 states. Of course, we're also the fifth most populated, but anyway, it's a small state, the reason I bring it up. But so basically, Serbia and New Jersey are roughly similar in size. So how is it that a country of Serbia's size is so small, but can produce so many great basketball players?
Well, in Serbia, basketball is kind of religion, Everybody understands it. When you go to watch some local game, like, I don't know, third division or something like that, everybody in the gym is expert. And they know the game, they know the rules, they follow everything. So basketball has a special place in the hearts of Serbians. And it's like very long basketball tradition going from ex-Yugoslavia. And I would say there is a huge number of great coaches, even like the people who were considered like godfathers of the Serbian basketball or Yugoslavian basketball. They were first who went to US to learn from college coaches back in the days. Like the first big Yugoslavian coach was the first who was visiting UCLA back in the days when they were
John Wooden.
Yeah, and he was close actually to Coach Wooden, and yeah, so people always like basketball. They always wanted to learn. We pay a lot of attention to details. And from the other side, in such a small country, we are very proud, And especially when we play for the national team, it's something different. And each player goes above his limits, and he really understands that he represents his own country, not just himself. And that kind of pride creates something extra.
Mm-hmm.
And each individual performs better than they do usually in their clubs. And when that happens, we have these kind of results. So yeah, there is a lot of factors, but people really love basketball in Serbia.
Right. The Yugoslavia broke up in the 90s.
Yeah, beginning of the 90s, exactly.
Right. So I was still pretty young, and I assume you were pretty young as well.
Yeah.
Was basketball revered in Yugoslavia as well in general? I mean, did Yugoslavia as a country love basketball?
A lot, yes. In all ex-republics, it's still very popular. And there is like half of the story is a joke, but I don't think that it would be a joke. people in ex-Yugoslavia, basketball fans are always talking what would happen if Yugoslavian national team played the original Dream Team. Because that was the team with basically all of them later or at that moment were NBA superstars.
Mhm.
Like you had Dražen Petrovic, you had Vlade Divac, you had Žarko Paspa, Dino Rađa, Toni Kukoc, Danilovic, Đorđević. They, at some part of their careers, they were successful NBA players,
Right.
and there were others. Back then,
Stojakovic?
Stojakovic would be probably too young at that moment to play.
Right.
But yeah, he's also coming from that school. But there was a lot of people, and like, I don't say that they would beat Dream Team, of course, but I think they would be a decent opponent for the original Dream Team.
Right.
Especially with that pride we were talking about. They would fight like hell against them,
Right. And I would say right now, the way basketball has developed, if you took all the former Yugoslavian countries and made one team out of it, I don't think anybody, United States, couldn't even touch that team in international competition.
That would be crazy. That means, let's say, that you add to these Serbians you mentioned that were missing and the others who were there, you add Luka Doncic.
Right.
You add, for example, Nikola Vucevic, who played for Montenegro.
Right.
Then there are a couple of, you add other Bogdanovic, Bojan Bogdanovic, Croatian.
Valanciunas.
He's Lithuania. They were not part of.
Oh,
Yugoslavia.
They weren't. Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, okay.
They were Soviet Union. He would be like. That would be also one interesting team to watch.
Yes.
Lithuanians, Latvians, Russians together, that would be a heck of a team also. But yeah, that would be, I mean, just add these few names to Serbian national team, and you would have like starting 5 NBA All-Star players.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most definitely. All right, so let's talk about Team USA. For the second straight World Cup, they failed to get to the podium. I think the last World Cup, I think they finished 7th or 9th, something like that. And
the 6th, I think they lost for the 5th place against Serbia also.
Okay, and this year they finished 4th. Of course, most people over here are saying, well, we didn't send our best team. But as we talked about, my partner Cam Riehl and I talked last week, we think it's much more than that. And so I just want to throw out some ideas, some of the things we talked about last week, where we think that the USA falls short. Some of it is dealing with the roster, but not necessarily adding more all-stars. All right, so I'll just run over the list. 1 we talked about was lack of quality big men. 2, we talked about poor defense. 3, too much ISO offense. 4 was not enough outside shooting. 5 was not enough role players. And 6 was no team continuity because, for example, Germany had a 3-year commitment from their guys.
Yeah.
And Coach K in our country used to want a 3-year commitment from his guys. And so I think continuity, you just can't get together a few weeks before the tournament and hope to succeed. But I think another thing is we had so many guys like Brandon Ingram was a good example. He's a star in the NBA, 20 points a night or more. But on that team, he wasn't the top 1, 2, 3 scorer. And so he's relegated to a role player, but he doesn't know how to be a role player.
Exactly.
So I was just curious I think, number one, Europe has caught up to us, but I think there's so many other factors that I think no matter who we put on the floor, the way everything is structured, we're still going to have trouble winning every time, starting next year at the Olympics.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, first thing I would say is definitely all these technical and tactical things that you mentioned. if you practice any team for just 2 weeks and you go to competition where others are preparing like 6 weeks or 2 months, you can't expect that you're going to win it easily, because all the Brandon Ingram example is a good one. He can't become a role player in 2 weeks. He can't change his attitude, even if he wants, it's like too short time. And then all the other things, like too many isolation plays, of course, because they didn't practice basically at all. They had few practices and they went to the championship. It takes time to create team chemistry, to organize, to define roles, and so on and so on. And then, obviously, big guys are the problem. And I think when we come to the Olympics, that the big guys could be even bigger problem for Team US next summer. Because I think that there is not too many, at the moment at least, too many top-level US big guys in the NBA.
And the other problem is they start in high school training to be NBA players. They don't know how to play in the post. And they don't know how to defend in the post and stuff like that. And so our young guys all think they're all wings. They all think they're going to shoot threes and stuff like that. They don't really know how to bang and stuff like that. But Cam and I came up with a list of about 6 guys we thought could be good candidates to be our centers in the next Olympics. And do you realize 3 of them had hardly played in the NBA? The best candidate we came up with was Chet Holmgren. He hasn't played a minute yet in the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. And that's a deeper problem, definitely. But yeah, from my perspective, if Team US wants to be more serious, they need, first of all, to prepare better. They need to understand where are they going and to respect the opponents more. Because what was actually striking for me was that this semi-final game against Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Like before, European teams, I don't know, they had to play a lot of zone, they needed to adjust, but Germany didn't do anything of that. It was high intensity running game with a lot of points. It was almost an NBA game.
Yes.
And they beat them, I will not say without any problems, but completely. Germany deserved it 100%. They were better team for 40 minutes. So that's something new. Before Team US lost some games, but it was a lot more tactical things from the European teams or Argentina or something like that. But this time, no. This was like chest-to-chest battle, and Germans were better. So that also, for me, that's a new thing, and that's very, very big problem for the US, let's say like that.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I noticed it wasn't just against the US. The Germans really played. They didn't have a problem going ISO. I'm not saying they didn't work for good shots, which is something I don't think Team USA did. But it wasn't like watching Latvia or Lithuania or even Serbia or Spain, the way they work the ball around until they get the good shot. Okay. And Germany, they did a lot of one-on-one ISO type stuff, and they did a lot of running. As you said, it was very, very NBA-like, and yet they still won it all. That's interesting.
And Germany was also missing some NBA guys. They have more guys in the NBA, and especially they have guys like Maxi Kleber from Dallas, who's also a big guy. Who would help that rotation under the basket even more, and it would be probably even more. They have some great big guys playing EuroLeague also who didn't play on this competition, so they can also be a better team. than they were this summer. So yeah, that's interesting.
Very, very interesting. So I want to talk, we talked a few hypotheticals about Yugoslavia and if Serbia was 100%. So we've had this debate on the show, and I know it's a little on the silly end, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts. Who should be considered champions of the world? Because sometimes, for example, like when whoever wins the NBA championship, they say champions of the world, and some people take offense to that. And so we talked about it on the show, who is the world champions? And I said, I think, World Cup or the Olympic winner next year, should be considered the world champion. But then again, I have to wonder if the Denver Nuggets played Team Germany, who would win? And I kind of lean toward the Nuggets.
Well, I say it depends when they would play. And would it be NBA or FIBA rules? I would take
FIBA. We're talking FIBA rules.
FIBA rules. Well, then depends again. Depends how much would they both have time to prepare and so on and so on. But for me, like in any other sport, you have World Championship, Olympic Games, and they are deciding who is the best in the world. So I think it's like everybody except US thinks like that.
Right.
And I can understand why the people in America want to be world champions when they win the ring in the NBA. But I mean, best players are there. It's the best league. But still, it's not the same when you play for the team and for your country. Like I gave the Serbian example. So I think it's like you can call yourself however you want, but you didn't play against the rest of the world. Like you played, and you two best players of the Denver Nuggets are not Americans,
Right. Exactly.
So let's say hypothetically, if Denver Nuggets is playing against Serbia, for whom is playing Jokic, because he can play for both.
Right.
Or if they play Canada, is Jamal Murray playing for Canada or for Denver Nuggets?
Right.
And then if you take out from their roster all the international players, and they have few more like Chanchar, Slovenia, maybe somebody else I forgot, it doesn't matter. Would they be even a playoff NBA team?
Right.
So I don't know. It's tough to say, but for me, the world champion is the team in any sports, not just basketball. The team which wins the world championship.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And like I said, it was a silly argument that maybe only could happen in the United States.
No, it can happen. It can happen anywhere. I understand it. Like he's the best basketball, no doubt. But yeah, still, this
but
world
as you said,
championship is something different.
It's the best basketball, but part of the reason why is because we're attracting the best players from other countries.
Exactly.
If we weren't allowed to do that, then yeah.
Yeah, then it would be different. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be very different. All right, so I love the quality of basketball that is played in FIBA. The working for the good shot. I really wish defensive 3 seconds, what didn't exist in the NBA. I find that a very annoying rule. And basically the NBA to me is kind of legislated defense out of the game, which I think is a disturbance. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, FIBA basketball, and this happens to college basketball because I cover college basketball much more than I cover the NBA. And yet, people always make degrading comments toward college basketball. Oh, it's not good basketball. It's not good basketball. But to me, it's the way basketball should be played. And what shocked me, over here was the only way you could watch FIBA is through a special subscription. They had the USA games on. But any other game, except for the championship, they didn't have on regular TV, and I couldn't understand that. Why do you think the NBA has gone this direction of kind of playing a hybrid game of the way the game was designed to be played? And why do you think its popularity persists? And I mean, is that I just don't quite understand it.
It's hard to answer, but I would say NBA pays a lot of attention to its brand, to its marketing, and they follow these new generations and how they are raised. So NBA is all about the short content, about, like a lot of young people. That's even trend now in Europe. Nobody watches a full game. They watch the highlights, they see the dunks, and they think that's it, dunks, threes, maybe some, I don't know, blocks or whatever. And that's the game for them, and nobody wants to watch it now, like to sit in front on TV and to watch it 2.5 hours. Very few people are doing it, and NBA understands it and offers a lot of like short content for the young people. On the other side, if you want to understand the game of basketball, as you know, you have to go deeper, and you have to understand also the defense and the team aspect of the game and how big importance have the role players, something you mentioned, and so on. But NBA is trying to do everything to stay popular. They are even in Europe, it's way easier to watch an NBA game than to watch, for example, some local basketball game, especially if you're not a fan. And NBA, Germany is a good example. Germany is their basketball product is very good, obviously, but still they are leaning towards the NBA a lot,
Right.
And kids, we have kids in our club who maybe know 2 players playing for Germany, but they know every NBA star because marketing is so good that wherever they turn, they see something related to the NBA. And credits to NBA for doing it. We should learn here in Europe a lot.
Yeah, but I would hate to see the game be played like this all over.
It will not be. It's impossible, but definitely to make it more popular in countries like Germany, we should copy some kind of things that NBA is doing.
Okay. All right. I want to see the team aspect. I don't want to see iso ball. I don't want to see somebody just come dribble down the court, and the minute they get over the half court line, they launch up a three. I don't. That's boring to me. It's just terribly boring to me. The NBA has become boring to me.
No, I mean, there are 30 teams, and I think that some of them are still playing very good basketball. Like you mentioned, NCAA, there are some very good teams, and some teams I also don't like. But it's normal on a big number of the teams. What's interesting about this World Cup is that the Serbian national team coach is 74 years old, and that the German national team coach is 65, 64, 65, something like that. So for sure, they are not the guys who are like new guys who are following the trends or something like that.
Right.
And they both proved that, let's say, I'm not saying they played old-fashioned basketball because it was very modern, but it was kind of different.
Yeah.
Especially than NBA.
Yeah.
And it's still working,
Yep.
So we should all think about it a little bit more. And you mentioned Coach K, who had a lot of success with US team, but he's also coming from a different structure than NBA.
Right.
And like you also mentioned, he demanded some other things, like on the court and off the court.
Yep.
And it was giving results. So, yeah.
All righty. So let's finish up talking about next summer's Olympics. 8 teams have qualified so far: Germany, Serbia, USA, France, Canada, South Sudan, Japan, and Australia. 4 others will qualify early next summer, and those they haven't announced the groupings yet, and they won't, I don't think, for a while. But if you look at the international landscape, I mean, if you just look at it in general, not who's qualified and not who hasn't, I think there are about 20 to 25 teams that deserve to be at the Olympics. So I got two questions from you, because the qualifying process, I think, involves like around 64 teams. But what I want to know is, why are they only having 12 teams at the Olympics? Why don't they at least have 16 teams at the Olympics? And the other question is, with Europe, when I look at my top 20 to 24 teams, top 20 to 25 teams, I'd say half of them are from Europe. So does it bother Europeans, and is it not too cool that the fact that, since we have a lot of these teams are selected by how well they do in their region of the world, that it kind of eliminates some of the better teams in the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's bad thing about basketball in general, that we have like Olympic Games with, I don't know, 12 teams, and then we have European Championship, I think it's 24 or something like that, But I don't know, did you hear about it? But they were debating about taking out the basketball from the Olympic Games.
I did hear that, but I didn't hear why.
Yeah, but they didn't say why. But it's like now they are playing 3-on-3, or it's also Olympic sport. Basketball 3-on-3, so they say like it's enough, like to have two kinds of basketballs is too much for them, or something like that. But it's only the
second most popular sport in the world.
Yeah. But they obviously don't care about it. I don't know why 12 teams, why the system is like that. I guess because it's so big event, they can't expand it. They don't have time and on the resources or something like that, because it doesn't make sense, And while you cover all the continents and everything with 12 teams, I think it's the weakest. It's way weaker than World Championship, for example.
Right.
Because like you have a couple of groups and you have a couple of teams who are like way behind the others,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Why they are doing it, I really don't understand.
Right. Well, at least we have the World Cup, which is basically the same difference, but it seems like, the professionals, take the Olympics. That means more to them. So let's at least get 16 teams in there, for goodness sake.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Marko. Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate your time, especially so late at night in Germany.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you also.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to do, last week we did our NBA Eastern Conference preview, and now we're going to do our Western Conference preview, and we're going to start off in the Northwest Division with the NBA champion Denver Nuggets. Of course, the Nuggets lost a key piece, their sixth man, in Bruce Brown, who went to Indiana. They also Vlatko Kankar is already lost for the season, who could have given them valuable minutes as a backup forward. They lost someone else. Who am I forgetting?
Jeff Green.
Right, Jeff Green went to where did Jeff Green? Houston.
He ended up signing with Houston.
Yeah, right. And so who are they bringing in 3 rookie draft picks, and Jalen Pickett, point guard out of Penn State, Julian Strother, who could kind of versatile. He could probably play anywhere from the 2 through 4 for you, out of Gonzaga, and then Hunter Tyson, one of the players that Cam and I are just in love with. He could play either forward spot. Of course, Peyton Watson, we expect to probably make a jump up in productivity this year. And other than that, the team's pretty much intact. So what do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to kind of take in the changes that the Suns have made to their roster. But I mean, on first reaction after the Lillard trade has gone through, like I still have no like hesitation in feeling that the Nuggets are still the clear favorite in the West. I felt that way last year with their added depth and having their core back healthy. They were the best team in the league for like 2 weeks before Jamal Murray ended up having his ACL injury, and they dealt with Michael Porter's injuries, and they came back, and I expected them to be the favorites. And I'm looking at this team as this is the first time I felt comfortable taking a repeat champion as like my prediction. Really since the Kevin Durant Warriors, that doesn't really even count. I feel like really since the Miami Heat, really in 2011, is the last time that we had like a repeat favorite that wasn't just completely busted and you were an idiot for taking someone else. I mean, when it was competitive. I think you're going to see a Michael Porter Jr. who's had a healthy offseason to continue to learn the system, continue to develop his game outside of shooting. I think, are they going to have some time to adjust? Losing Bruce Brown, who is a very important role player for them. You could argue really their fifth starter, even though he was mostly the sixth man. Yeah, there's going to be an adjustment, but this core, I think, is pretty clearly still the best in the NBA in my mind.
And relatively young,
Yep. They're all on the same timeline. You've got all of them with a healthy offseason. I mean, Jamal Murray had some rehab going on, but that was routine. I still don't see any team that's particularly built well to challenge the Nuggets, challenge the Jokic style of play. I think a lot of teams just frankly have no one to match up with him at all. And really, like, I think we're going to see Jamal Murray as an all-star this year. Can he take another step forward? I mean, it's pretty classic that he starts the year at like 16 points per game, and then he kind of works himself into shape. I think we're going to see him come out the gates much more polished, much more, prepared to sort of take his all-NBA stance. I don't see anybody else that's that would be favored to beat them in a series in my mind. Right. I still think this is the best team in the NBA.
Yep, I agree with you. I think we all expect Christian Brown to take another step up. And I think basically, I think the team needs either Peyton Watson or Hunter Tyson to be an effective role player.
Yep. I gotta throw in Zeke Naji as well.
I've been waiting for him for like 4 years. But
yep. You see him in flashes. I think he and Chanchar were really like neck and neck for that sort of third forward backup center type role.
Right.
And they would go back and forth, and Mike Malone would have a favorite for a couple months. But I really like Naji. He's a very versatile switcher on defense, and offensively he can shoot the three. He can handle it a little bit. He fits well as a passer.
Really well.
Yep. Really, really fast, very athletic. I like him he'll probably, in my mind, I feel like he'll be the backup center.
Yeah.
But he can easily play the four next to Jokic as well.
This is true. Yeah, that would be, if he plays well and they get, can get good solid minutes out of Watson and or Tyson. Yeah, this team's going to be really tough to beat.
Yep. Love Tyson. I think he's going to fit in immediately.
Right. All right. So one of our favorite teams to make jokes about is finished second in the Northwest. That's the Minnesota Timberwolves. They won 42 games. They were the 8th seed. in the Western Conference. The top of the depth chart, about the only real change, because they were able to re-sign Naz Reid. At the top of the depth chart would be Shake Milton. He comes in as a reserve guard for them. And from the Sixers, they drafted Jalen Clark, who probably won't see much time because he's still recovering from an Achilles injury. They also drafted Leonard Miller, who probably isn't ready in terms of a physical or mature state. Well, not physical, but just his game probably isn't polished enough yet for the NBA. And he's playing behind already. There's 4 bigs that are getting regular minutes on this team in Towns, Gobert, Naz Reid, they're big re-signing, and Kyle Anderson. So yeah, and Jaden McDaniels, who injured himself during the playoffs, which is probably pretty costly to Minnesota, he should be back. And if he's not, I think Josh Minot, might be able to pick up some of his minutes. But yeah, I mean, this team very much looking the same as last year, which is probably not a great thing.
Yeah, no, it's not great. That being said, though, I mean, I think in my mind, this team overachieved last year just sheerly off of, a step up from Anthony Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're probably going to see another one this season.
Right.
I think he's assuredly going to be at an all-star level. You're going to see a bump in his production as a passer, I believe, but certainly as a scorer, he's very much ready. The team just still doesn't fit. The Towns Gobert front court does not work. And the whole idea
which made the Leonard Miller pick all the more curious.
Yep. Mind blowing. And the whole idea that you can continue to stagger them and that's a good thing, I think is wasteful.
Right.
When you really look at their cap sheet. They're going to need to quickly find an answer to that equation. Like, are we going to move on from Towns? Are we going to just, suck it up and get what we can for Gobert while we can? Kind of just take the sunk cost on that one, because they've got a guy in Anthony Edwards who is, we've already seen, a high-level playoff performer, a damn near unstoppable rim attacker, slasher. And he's an improved jump shooter. I mean, he's like, I compared him to like a young MJ in the past or a young Kobe type player. He has that potential. Like if we're talking about like a modern D Wade, he's one of those guys, and you can't continue to clog the paint for him every night. If they come out cold again this year, like they did last year, look for one of those trades to happen. Either they cut bait on Towns or Gobert. They have to make a choice.
Right. I've heard the Knicks would be very much interested in Towns.
Yep, I've seen that too. I think the Knicks want Embiid, but I think if the Sixers, look solid this year, that's not going to happen. And I think Towns will be available for the right price, though. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what kind of offer you're looking for Karl Towns, who's struggled in the playoffs every year that he's made it.
I actually think it would benefit this team more to get rid of Gobert, but you're not going to get as much for Gobert.
Yep, and I think it would just be from a PR perspective. I think it would be an embarrassment to have to turn around and flip him after a season and a half. I just don't. I
think they're way past the embarrassment part.
Yeah.
I just think they're just never going to hear the end of this.
No,
that's all there is to it, unless they turn it around. But I don't. Yeah,
I mean, it's a shame. Like they're never going to get that kind of return for him they're never going to be able to make up that value. The only way they could even hope to do that is with Towns. And realistically, Towns is more on the Ayton type of value right now. Like, some people like him, some people would probably frown at ever trading for him at this point, especially with his contract.
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, I'm just excited to see Anthony Edwards play basketball. That guy's incredible. But in terms of success, I don't know. I don't know if this team's playoff bound. I don't know if they're going to the conference final. I don't know if they're going to be a lottery team. It could be any outcome with them.
Yeah. A lot of teams, you could say their sum is greater than the parts. This team's just the opposite. The parts are greater than the sum.
Completely. That's a great way of putting it, Rich.
All right, so now we'll talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder, who now finally seem to be in a position to make a serious run at the playoffs. This year they signed Vasily Mikic, Serbian point guard, former EuroLeague MVP, and that was basically their big offseason signing. They also drafted combo guard Cason Wallace out of Kentucky, and combo forward Keontae Johnson out of Kansas State. Johnson will be on a two-way this year. Cason Wallace is on a standard contract. Of course, Oklahoma City gets Chet Holmgren. Finally get to see him play. And of course, Shea and Josh Giddey formed that great young backcourt. Usman Jang looked great in Summer League. Cam raved about him. And so this team has the makings of a really promising competitive team. A couple of injury notes. Alexei Pokashevsky is injured, probably not going to be ready for the start of the season. And Victor Oladipo, same could be said for him. And they announced today that he will not be showing up at training camp. So the plans are either to cut him or trade him. Probably can't trade him. So they'll probably have to cut Victor Oladipo. So, and the feelings are that Oladipo will be ready to play at some point this season. So we might end up seeing him like back on the Heat for some kind of minimum deal. All right. So what do you think of Thunder?
I think they are playoff bound. I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander he's clearly an all NBA guard. Averaged a chunk over 30 points per game last season. Just a high quality, highly efficient scorer who can, support this team both off ball and on ball. He's very unique in that way. You got another year of development for Giddey. Hopefully the jump shot is still getting a little bit crisper, going to be a little bit more efficient. You mentioned, my love for Usman Jang. That guy had a hell of a summer league, and he's already become more than I thought he probably ever would be. I think he's going to slot into some forward minutes. Jalen Williams, both of them, we love here at HPP. And I'm so excited to see a season from Chet Holmgren. I think he's become underrated through the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes and the past season of him being off the court, injured and rehabbing. And I love the way he affects the game at the defensive end. He's going to be able to do that immediately. We know that. Will he be able to give them enough rebounding? We'll see. Is he going to give them enough shooting? We'll see. But I think this is like the last experiment and retune year for OKC. Past this, it's time to start, weeding out the guys that you're ready to move on from, starting to move some of those contracts, move some young players for some competitive now type guys. This team's going to be super frisky. They'll be competitive every single night, especially with their depth. I don't see any way that they don't make the playoffs.
Right. And last year they were the 10th seed. 40 wins, which was just behind Minnesota. So yeah, I think they're pretty much a lock to make the playoffs. A team that almost made the playoffs, but just missed, was the team that fleeced Minnesota in the Rudy Gobert trade, and that's the Utah Jazz. They won 37 games. They kind of put it in tank mode toward the end of the season to finish out of the play-in game area. They ranked 12th in the conference with 37 wins. They pretty much, beside the John Collins trade, which was big, beside the John Collins trade, they also drafted Taylor Hendricks, another power forward, high, very, he was a top 10 pick, wasn't he? He should have been, if he wasn't. Yeah, I think he was top 10. They also drafted Bryce. Was he 11th? Okay. Bryce Sensabaugh, they also drafted. Now, of course, Bryce was injured going into the draft. He dropped, but we were very high on him. Thought he could have been if he was healthy, I think he may have gone in the lottery range. And they also drafted Keontae George, who actually might start at point guard for this team. Of course, their other options are Colin Sexton and Chris Dunn, who kind of revived his career last year at the end of the season. And the other, the main suspects are still coming back. Jordan Clarkson, Ochai Agbaji, Lauri Markkanen, of course, played very well in World Cup. Simone Fontecchio, do I got that? Fontecchio? He played really good.
Fontecchio, yeah.
Yeah, he played
sorry, he was ninth. I was thinking of Howard. I flopped him.
Right. So Fontecchio played really good in World Cup too for Italy. Was definitely one of their top 3 players, if not their best. And of course you have Kessler, Olynyk at the bigs. This team looks really, really good. I still think, you're going to have some growing pains at the point guard position. Taylor Hendricks is probably not going to, he's going to take some time to get adjusted. And Sensabaugh, we don't even know how much he'll play because of the injury. This team's definitely moving in the right direction. I think they have enough talent to get into the play-in range.
Yeah, I think could they get in the play-in range? Sure. I don't think they want to.
Yes. Yes.
And so I doubt that they'll make that run. They'll probably come out hot just like they did last year, and then slowly, quietly drift into, mediocrity. From the team building perspective, first off, we loved their offseason. Not only we feel like they had a really strong draft, but they went out and got John Collins for nothing, as Rich mentioned. That being said, though, I'm looking at their depth chart this year, and we've given the Raptors a lot of crap for not having any guards. I kind of feel that way about the Jazz. Or maybe it's just they have so many front court players. I mean, you got Walker Kessler, Olynyk, John Collins, Taylor Hendricks, Samanic, Yurtseven's still on the roster. And even Lauri Markkanen, really, he's a 4. He just happens to be able to handle the ball and shoot.
Right.
That's why he's playing small forward for them. But this team, even Fontecchio is more of a 4.
Oh, yeah.
There's just a lot of bigs. And then you dig into the guards. It's Colin Sexton, who the bill on him has always been, he's pretty much just a scorer.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Jordan Clarkson. Same with even Keontae George, who they just picked up.
Right. Score first guy.
Yeah, score first sort of guards.
And he didn't really play the point in his 1 year at Baylor.
Yeah, a lot of off guards. They're all off guards. So then you really look at the
Chris
guys
Dunn.
Chris Dunn's kind of like the one guy on the roster that's has the potential to be a primary ball handler, but also is going to get other guys involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then even their wings, there's not a whole lot there. You got Ochai Agbaji, who I've kind of heard rumblings is maybe going to be a starter this year, and they're waiting on Talen Horton-Tucker to see if they got anything there.
And Agbaji wasn't, he had a Midland, didn't have a great rookie season.
Yeah, he had flashes,
Yeah.
especially on the defensive end. I think he looked really solid.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a
Um,
solid player. Yeah, I'm not.
yeah, I think he's going to be good. Not worried about him at all. No, not worried about him. But I just think, if this team's trying to get into the playoff range, that's where they're going to start to fall off.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of a lack of shooting, a little bit of a lack of defense, a little bit of a lack of playmaking. I think that's where they're going to be looking to add going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing, the only way I see this team making the playoffs is that Abaji would have to emerge as a really solid starting level player, and one of those point guards would have to emerge as as a solid point guard, other than just being a scorer. I don't think scoring is going to be a problem for Sexton or George. Of course, we know Clarkson can put up 20, in a heartbeat. Collins can do that, but there are a lot of offensively geared players on this team. Even Olynyk is more offense than defense, though he's gotten better over the years. Kessler is about the only guy, and Obagi, are the two guys. And Dunn, that was one of his, when he was a top 5 overall pick, one of the things everybody loved about him was his potential to be an on-ball defender. So, but yeah,
he's still a great defender.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, we'll move on. All right, the last team in the Northwest is the Portland Trailblazers, who we've already talked about somewhat. Of course, they were 13th in the conference, only had 33 wins last year, and their depth chart changed dramatically today. So right now, we don't know what's going on with Drew Holiday, but they have Drew Holiday and, of course, their top pick, Scoot Henderson at point guard. They have Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, Ryan Rupert, one of their draft picks this year. Matisse Thybulle are their primary wings. And then they have Chris Murray, another one of their draft picks this year, who's a combo forward. They have Jeremy Grant, who they paid big money for in the offseason at power forward. Jabari Walker, who had a solid rookie season for them last year, another power forward, and Kamara joins that mix at power forward. Now they have Ayton at center, and then they have a ton of other options at center, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll just run down just for the hell of it. They signed Duop Reith, and I haven't been able to. I think that's a non-guaranteed standard contract. Now he looks to be the best of the bunch, if you ask me. They also have Moses Brown on a non-guaranteed contract. Then they have John Butler, the 7'1", who actually plays more. He's kind of like a Kai Jones type of guy, 7'1" guy who likes to play on the perimeter. And then they have Abu Baji, who was another two-way contract guy. He was more of a defensive-minded center last year, and he's on a two-way contract. And they signed George Condit, fresh out of World Cup, is on an Exhibit 10. Probably won't make it because there's a big crowd there. But as you can see, it's kind of a mishmash right now that's going to have to be put together, and the final story probably won't be written until we find out what I would suspect what they're going to get for Holiday. They'll probably get a veteran point guard, to replace him, somebody to mentor Scoot, and they're going to get some draft picks, and maybe some other roster filler that won't be really that important.
Yeah. No, I mean, I pretty clearly the worst team in the division. The breadth of centers is almost funny because they're all like shades of the exact same player.
Right. And Kamara and Walker have played center in college.
Yeah, and even Jeremy Grant, Jabari Walker do the same things offensively. You throw Chris Murray in there, he's basically the same player. Even Simons and Sharp are very similar in a lot of ways.
Right.
They clearly have some archetypes that they're looking for in Portland. I just feel like they missed the boat on this tanking team. Like I feel like they're starting from like square -2 in terms of a rebuild. They got very lucky that they moved up in the draft to get Scoot, because otherwise this team would just be gross. The sooner they can move Holiday, the better to me. Just go full tank mode. I don't see any reason to hold him until the trade deadline.
Well, I mean, I can
let
see
Scoot do his thing.
Well, I agree. Now, the one thing I would say, Holiday being there certainly would hold back Henderson in terms of minutes played, but who better to learn how to be a professional point guard from than Drew Holiday? So it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it would really hurt them by keeping him, but since his deal expires, you should move him and get what you can right now. And you're going to get more for him now than you will at the trade deadline or whenever.
Yeah. And I mean, that trade could come in the next day or two.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, training camp's coming. If somebody wants him, they want him in-house so that they can get that continuity going.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the trade happens before we get the show posted.
Honestly. Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, we already harped on Ayton long enough. I'm excited to see him with a bigger role, more freedom to experiment and try new things, especially offensively. And just like a fresh start. I think if there's ever been a fresh start guy, it's DeAndre Ayton. Like, just get him in the building and see what you got. I'm excited to see Thibault with a little bit bigger role, a little more freedom to, shoot 30% from 3 and experiment with that. This like, I just want to see the fun bad team. I think they could be that.
Yeah.
We'll have some 40-point Anthony Simons nights and
maybe
throw in
even a couple of 30-pointers from Shaedon Sharp.
Yeah, totally.
Scoot's the player
bad
I mean, Scoot is the one player though. I mean, I wasn't impressed with him last year, in the G League. He comes out and gets hurt immediately. He was hurt twice during the G League season. Then he gets hurt in Summer League. I don't trust his jump shot at all. And I'm not crazy about his decision making. I'm not as high on him as other people.
That's fair. But you're very much more like looking at it from the analytical side of things. Like,
yes.
I think, but like you have the analytics to support his mid-range jumper, which I think is already pretty polished. And I think, I mean, we're already seeing Ja Morant start to push his 3-point range out. We're seeing De'Aaron Fox start to push his 3-point range out.
Well,
and they had
Cam,
no mid-range.
He was terrible at the rim last year.
He was, yeah. Yep. I mean, we just gotta see him on the court. I think.
Yeah.
I want to bet on the guys with the mentality that he has. I think he's very much in the lane of like a Anthony Edwards type of prospect in terms of what his physicality is. How does he look at?
Yeah, I have more confidence though in Edwards' physical ability.
Yeah. I mean, Edwards is just a complete freak, but Scoot's like a 1B freak.
See, the question me with Edwards was his desire, because he made comments just before the draft about, he'd rather be playing in the NFL and stuff like that. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, I'm sure that was pre-HPP, but I'm sure that drove you nuts.
No, that wasn't pre-HPP. No.
Oh wait, yeah, that was the first. That was
our first year. No, we definitely talked about it, or maybe it was. I don't remember, but definitely, if I didn't talk about it, I wrote about it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. No, I think he's I think he's very much the real deal. Personally, I would probably prefer actually. I mean, like if you're gonna hold on to Holiday, I think I'm more so. If there's a sticking point for me on their roster, it's can you please choose between Simons and Sharp? Like
I think they might play a fair amount. I think they might play a fair amount together.
Yeah, I think Simons will end up playing quite a bit of point guard. but
Well,
to
I'm
me, it's just
also
like
thinking
we've seen,
Sharp might be coming in when Thibault's stinking it up on the offensive end.
yeah, playing forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
I
know,
mean, it
man.
would
It's
be
just
a
like
small
we've
lineup, but you
seen.
do have guys like Ayton and Grant to give you beef. So,
Yeah, we've seen the small guards playing together thing in Portland for too long, and it's
yeah,
just it's
true.
time for them to change their ways.
Right. Yeah, so that's another piece they really could use until if Rupert comes around, if he ever comes around. They're going to need. I don't think Thibault. I think I'm pretty much convinced he's not a starter. At least not until he can hit a shot. I mean, hell, he got benched in World Cup. So
Yeah, he did.
I think that's probably the next position they want to fill, and obviously they don't need a scorer. They got plenty of scorers on this team, so he'll do fine for now. But I think ultimately, and Rupert, too, his reputation is being a long defender, so maybe that's the answer. So yeah, we'll see. But I agree, they're going to stink.
Yeah, they're gonna suck. They'll be fun to watch, though.
Oh, definitely, and yes, it will be definitely intriguing to watch them. I'm excited for that. All right, so now we're going to talk about the Pacific Division. Interestingly, all 5 teams finished in the top 8, and led by Sacramento Kings, who were the 3rd best team in the West. They had a 48-win season. And their offseason moves weren't many, but I think this team has gotten better. They drafted Colby Jones, who could play anywhere from point guard to wing. They got Chris Duarte from Indiana for a couple of second rounders, and the key pieces are all coming back: De'Aaron Fox, Davion Mitchell, Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, Keegan Murray, Harrison Barnes, Trey Lyles, Domantas Sabonis. So yeah, this young team just seems to have gotten just a little better.
Yeah, Rich, I think I don't think they're going to make a huge leap, but I think another year of continuity and adding some pieces around the edges, the Kings are going to be right back where they were last year, very solid, and they've got a nice year of playoff experience underneath their belt. I mean, they pushed the Warriors to the edge, and came up just short. But I really love this team. I think offensively, I love like the ceiling of what they can be. You worry a little bit about the talent level. And there's definitely some feelings that maybe they overachieved a little bit last year, especially given some of the defensive struggles. But I mean, they showed it against the Warriors. Like they're a very, very strong team, and they'll be a tough playoff out for just about anybody in the West.
Yeah. I mean, of course, Fox and Sabonis are the keys. They're the 2 stars, and probably what's missing on this team is a 3rd star. And they have a lot of depth at guard and wing, but if Sabonis got hurt, they would be in trouble. And of course, he is coming off of an injury that he played with all of last season. I don't believe he had surgery for it.
Yeah, he broke his hand. And it was a bone in his hand. I can't remember exactly which one. But no, he played through it basically from the All-Star break on through the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think it finally kind of started to affect him. By the time they made it to that Warriors series, he was kind of laboring, especially given the fact that he got his chest jumped off of. So yeah, I'm sure that didn't help his health for the series.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you got to hope that Keegan Murray could maybe turn into that 3rd star for them. I mean, given how good he looked in Summer League, he was probably the star of Summer League this offseason if you didn't get a chance to watch. Maybe he can take that step forward. And I mean, if I doubt that he's going to look like an all-star this year, but if he can be a top 15 starting small forward, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if they can keep this core together for another year or two, then they might start to really get frisky. I think that's the timeline that we're kind of looking at with the Kings.
Right. I should add that they did add a couple other pieces that are worth noting. Sasha Vrenzikov. They brought over from, let's see, he last played for Olympiacos in the Euro League and the Greek League. This is a guy who averaged in that competition over 17 points per game, shooting 55% from the field, 38% from three on 4.5 attempts per game, 84 from the free throw line, threw in 6.4 rebounds per game. So they bring him in, former second-round pick, and then they also bring in another rookie that they drafted, I forgot to mention, was Jalen Slauson, who they put on a two-way. So he probably won't have much of an impact, but Vrenzikov could.
Vezenkov.
Vezenkov, is that how it's okay?
Yeah, Vezenkov, yeah.
All right. I just changed his name. All right. So the next team in the division was the Phoenix Suns, and they were the 4th seed in the West. They had 45 wins. And of course, their team changed today, as we talked about before. So I probably won't go over too much. They got a lot of needed depth today in the trade. Of course, the biggest thing, and I would say, actually, when you look from the off season, that what really was the big moves that they made, because they brought pretty much their core back, added Bradley Beal. Of course, I keep on forgetting that trade was so long ago. I don't think, but of course, Bradley Beal now joins the team, and he will be backed up by Grayson Allen. So that's huge for them. And of course, Nurkic replaces DeAndre Ayton at center. So I went from being lukewarm on Phoenix to now thinking they are, they're definitely going to be up there with Denver for, fighting for the conference championship, I think.
Yeah, I think they're kind of your 1A, 1B in the West. I think it really is these two teams, and you might have some other teams that could turn it on come playoff time. I'm sure we'll talk about a couple of those coming up, probably from the same division as well. Yeah, I mean, adding the depth was necessary. It's a little tough to bring in yet another sort of not only defensive liability, but injury liability in Nurkic. I mean, he's been completely unable to stay healthy for 3 seasons now, going on 4. I love what he can do for them if healthy. You brought it up earlier, Rich. He's a much better passer than Ayton. He's a very solid rebounder. I like his fit with Durant as well. If Durant's going to play a lot of 4, he gives them a little bit of a post-up option if they need, but he can also, he's a very capable short roll passer. I like that aspect. Then, adding a little bit of guard depth, Grayson Allen is going to be huge for them. And I think it makes their depth chart just make a little bit more sense, especially bringing in Keon Johnson as well. A little bit more guard play. Ultimately, I still feel like there's something missing with this team. I don't know what it is. I've always kind of felt this way about the Suns as a whole. Well,
I think for me, I look at Beal, I look at Durant, I look at their age and their injury history, and I could easily see that one of those guys missing 20, 30 games this year. And you just mentioned Nurkic. He too has had trouble staying on the court. Eric Gordon's had trouble staying on the court in the past. Of course, he's not a key player now, but he's probably going to still be their sixth or seventh man. So yeah, I think that's what it is. But those bad feelings I had about Beal and Durant being able to stay on the court have somewhat been relieved by some of the guys they added today.
Yeah. I think if you've got an injury to one of these guys, you're not too concerned,
right,
about their ability to stay up in the upper 5 seeds.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's certainly a world where you've got. I mean, even Booker. I mean, he hasn't been overly healthy recently, past couple seasons. So, yeah, maybe it is the health aspect that's a little bit off-putting. I think too, like there's just so little continuity with this team at this point.
That's true.
They're really kind of like an unknown squad.
Yeah.
Coming into the season. So
yeah, how are they going to fit
talent,
as opposed to Denver, who we know can play. They mesh well, together.
And it's virtually the same core.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking about them having lost depth, and it's like their sixth guy.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I mean, Phoenix has basically overhauled the whole roster outside of Durant and Booker. It's pretty much all new. So we'll see. They added the depth, but we'll see which one of those guys really comes and stands out. They're going to ask a lot of Okogie, or some combination of Okogie, Little, Bates, Diop, Watanabe.
Yeah. Most definitely.
I think, that's going to be the kind of the big question mark for them. Who's that fifth starter? But if they get that figured out, I mean, the shooting that this team has and the playmaking that they have, it's going to be really hard to compete with in the West.
Maybe why we not crazy about Phoenix is because maybe we learned something last year from the next team we're going to talk about, and that's the LA Clippers, who finished fifth in the West with 44 wins, the same number as Golden State. And the Clippers last year were my pick to win it all. And they fell flat on their face pretty much due to injuries. Of course, we don't know, how healthy Kawhi and or Paul George will be this season. And, of course, they added Russell Westbrook, late last year. He, played excellent in the playoffs, but he was so much in his environment there, being the man. So when Kawhi and Paul George come back, is he still going to be comfortable, being more of a distributor? That's yet to be seen. But this team really hasn't made a ton of changes. They added Kobe Brown in the draft, and they added Jordan Miller in the draft. Kobe Brown played very well in Summer League. Jordan Miller is on a two-way. And then pretty much the rest of the team is the same. And you have a bunch of guys that are kind of, getting up there in years that really, how much value they have left is really questionable. And I'm specifically talking about Robert Covington, Nick Batum, and Marcus Morris. So I don't think that's going to matter too much as long as Kawhi and Paul George are healthy. But, this is a team I could see, competing, for a top 3 or 4 spot in the West, or it could be a team that I see, being the 8th or 9th seed in the West, depending on how the injury situation plays out and how Russell Westbrook fits in. Oh, I should also say one other addition. They made a trade with Houston to get Kenyon Martin Jr., who I think is probably, he or Kobe Brown, one of those two guys, I think has to give them significant minutes at the forward spot and might inject some youth into this lineup.
Yeah, I agree, Rich. I was just about to bring Kenyon Martin up. I mean, You hit the nail right on the head. I mean, this team has been lacking that youth athletic punch for years now. That's part of why Terrence Mann has become so like highly valued around the league. I think just because he pops anytime you watch the Clippers play, because he's just about the one guy who's consistently healthy and can still jump and feels athletic when he's on the court. Barring Russell Westbrook, who still looks like a physical freak.
Right.
You may not have mentioned it, but I mean, Westbrook re-signed for just about the cheapest contract imaginable.
Yeah.
And to bring him back on that sort of deal kind of shows where he's at to me. He wants to win games, and he will do just about anything to do that. I can't imagine that there wasn't a better deal out there for Russell Westbrook monetarily.
I mean, just about everybody on this team is making more money than him.
Yeah. I mean, just about everybody in the league is making more money than him. Right. Most of the rookies are. Hell, some of the second rounders and undrafted guys are going to make more than Russell Westbrook will this season. I mean, it's the same story as every other Clippers team for the past 4-5 years. If their top two guys are healthy, they're a contender. If they're not, and it's, who's sitting on this part of the back-to-back tonight and who's sitting on Thursday night games because it's not a national televised game, and, we're counting the beans until one of them is eliminated from all NBA status. It's like, if Kawhi and Paul George aren't playing consistently, this team is, putting it gently, middle of the pack. Just like a definition of mediocre, really. I think,
and even then, I mean, we saw Kawhi come back for the playoffs last year. He looked fantastic, and before we know it, he was out.
Yep. And even when they do tend to come back, they come back from these injuries in pretty record time. Honestly, like they eat both Paul George and Kawhi. Paul George has had shoulder surgeries. He's had knee surgeries. Kawhi's had knee surgeries, shoulder surgeries, hand surgery. Like, you can run down the list. They keep coming back in pretty timely manner, but then they're never around consistently. They're taking practices off. They're taking games off. They're taking weeks at a time to go do X, Y, Z. They need to be in the gym with the team. There can't be any more double standard for these guys. They're not superstars right now. I mean, they got to earn that title again. And both of them going into contract years coming up need to earn that money, because otherwise they're not making that next big contract the way they've played on these current deals.
Right.
I would love to see the Clippers as an upper seed in the Western Conference playoffs this year. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't believe it.
Yeah. Just yeah. All right. So the team that tied them with 44 wins is Golden State, and of course, the big change there was the Chris Paul trade that was actually made just before the draft, and of course that sent. I'm drawing a blank. Sent Jordan Poole to Washington. So it's going to be interesting. The other, I should say what else they did. They signed Dario Saric to be backup center, backup forward. They also signed Corey Joseph to be an emergency their fifth guard, I would say. They drafted Brandon Podziemski with their first-round pick. They also drafted Trace Jackson Davis with their second-round pick. He's a power forward center. Podziemski did not look good in Summer League and didn't look ready to play. Jackson Davis might have to play whether he wants to or not, because he's one of the few players on this team that can give you, double-digit rebounds and block some shots. Very talented player, and we were all surprised here at HP that he went so late in the draft. The interesting thing is going to be, does Chris Paul come off the bench? Do they keep that starting five that they've been using for the past few seasons together? Or do they throw Chris Paul in the starting lineup? My feelings is bring Chris Paul off the bench, save his, save the wear and tear, keep him on a minutes. I'd keep him on a minutes restriction all year long. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Kerr came out with just a classic Steve Kerr soundbite. I think he said, word for word, "Oh, well, we have 6 starters on this team." I'm like, that's not how it works, Steve. You gotta pick somebody, come off the bench. And I think you're exactly right. Like, Chris Paul is a Hall of Famer, first ballot, no questions asked. What more ego do you need? The one thing that you were searching for is a ring. You're playing behind Steph Curry. Sorry. You're playing behind Klay Thompson. Sorry. You're playing behind Andrew Wiggins. It's just happening. I mean, Kevon Looney absolutely deserves the right to be a starter on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't play that small. I mean, if it ultimately becomes Green, Wiggins, Thompson, Paul, Curry, that lineup is getting demolished on the defensive end. I don't care what kind of defensive level, all-star level Draymond Green gets to or can get to this year. You will get killed if that's your starting lineup. Any lineup, honestly. So, I mean, what is Chris Paul here to do? He's here to support this bench unit. They've got a bunch of promising guys with Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Trace Jackson Davis, couple more guys to mention. Usman Garuba just signed with the team recently.
Mm-hmm.
Another young gun, sort of defensive type prospect that could learn a little bit from some of the veterans in this organization. I'm just
they brought in Rudy Gay, by the way. Rudy Gay signed today.
Ghost of Rudy Gay?
Yeah, he signed a non-guaranteed deal. I don't know whether he's going to stick. But yeah, he would, if right now they got 14 guaranteed contracts, or no, excuse me, 13. So I would think either Rudy Gay or Garuba will be upgraded to a standard contract, or Rudy Gay will get his money guaranteed. And I think that will be the 14th guy to make the roster. Though I still worry about this team in terms of they still don't really have a classic shot blocking center. With Looney being in Trace Jackson.
Yeah, I think Looney is that guy, though. He's shown it play like multiple years in the playoffs.
No, he's good, but I still would like to see somebody else. See, I don't trust Kuminga. I don't trust Kuminga. So
that's fair. I don't think they do either.
Right. So I would kind of like to see Sarge get more of the minutes at the 4, and then Looney. Right now, I would say, Jackson Davis are going to be getting the minutes at the 5.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably right. We're still going to see a lot of Draymond running center this year. It might be more of a combination type of deal where they'll go a little bit bigger on the wings. Like they'll have Draymond running center, bring Kuminga and Wiggins in together. I think we'll see quite a bit of that combination front court wise. I don't know too though. The more I think about it, the more I feel like this is a reach, or that the Chris Paul trade was a bit of a reach for the Warriors. I think, you can debate the merits of the 2 timeline idea and whether or not it was really raising their ceiling, but I think it's really hard to argue that they would have won that championship against the Celtics without Jordan Poole. Granted, he had a pretty bad shooting streak in the finals, but I think they needed that injection of youth to kind of push the team, kind of make, when you got the young guy in there he wants to go out and make his deal. He wants to go out and score his 30 points a game. It pushes, your veterans to kind of step up too. And now you've got a really old team.
Yeah.
Going down
and
the
a lot of the
roster.
guys coming off the bench are not really scorers. Moody,
No.
I think Moody he's got to be the guy. He's got to be the guy.
Yeah, and he was floating in and out of the rotation last year.
Oh yeah.
He was one of those guys. He'd have stretches, he'd go a month or two without really playing. And then he would, have a month here and there where, he's getting some consistent minutes, but he'd show like flashes every other 4 games, even in those stretches of the season where he was getting consistent minutes. I think one thing that is promising for Moody is, I think defensively, he showed that he can really fit into their switching scheme. He can play up taller guys. He can play down to really like shooting guard, borderline point guard type guys.
Mhm.
And he's going to have to do that too if they really are going to commit to a consistent rotation with Steph and Chris Paul. Those guys are not guarding the primary point guard. They're going to be hidden on the off guards. So you got, Gary Payton II. We'll see. Another year older. Klay Thompson, another year older. Just getting further and further from that defensive prime that they've both had.
Yep.
I think Moody's kind of the next guy. Like, hey, you got to guard the point guard tonight. You got to go guard John Morant. We'll see. I think it would be a huge mistake for this team to like fully give up on some of the youth that they have in house. Like, do I trust Kuminga? Not yet, but you haven't given me any reason to trust him. You don't play him enough. I got to give him some minutes before I can see him in the playoffs. And
well, Trace Jackson Davis, if he gets the opportunity, he will bring energy. He will bring energy.
Yes, he will.
But when I meant it's got to be the guy, I meant as a 6th man type of scorer.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because Saric is nice, but he's not gonna light it up. And nobody else on this team really, and the bench has the chops to light it up, but Moody does. So, all right. So now we'll talk about the last team in the Pacific, and that's the Lakers, who were just 1 game behind the Clippers and Warriors in wins with 43 and the 7th best record in the West. The Lakers have made so many changes. And it's probably easier just to kind of go over what their depth chart looks like. Right now at point guard, they have D'Angelo Russell. They have Gabe Vincent via the Heat. They have rookie Jalen Hood-Schifino, who they drafted, probably not ready to make major contributions. They have Austin Reeves as shooting guard. They also have Max Christie, who looked really good in Summer League. At forward, they have a bunch of options. Of course, LeBron, Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt all return, and they're going to be joined by Taurean Prince, Cam Reddish, and rookie Maxwell Lewis. And lastly, they overhauled their front court behind Anthony Davis, who's still there, by signing Christian Wood and Jackson Hayes. So this team is, on paper, looks very deep. The question, this is kind of like with the Clippers, how much are we going to get out of LeBron? How much are we going to get out of Anthony Davis? I think, but they have to be pleased with the progress of Austin Reeves, who seems to, they managed to sign a lot of these guys for much less than you would have expected. Yeah.
Yeah, Rich. It still blows my mind that nobody played the Lakers sort of bluff on Austin Reeves' contract. They went into the offseason pretty much telegraphing that they would match any offer for him specifically. It looked like they were going to have to choose between him, Rui, and D'Angelo, the way things were going. And they ended up signing all 3 of them. And on top of that, excuse me, on top of bringing back all 3 of Reeves, Russell, and Hachimura, they brought in a ton more talent. I mean, Gabe Vincent, Max Christie. I mean, continuing to develop. I mean, bringing in Christian Wood for next to nothing. I mean, I don't see a way that this team isn't competing deep into the playoffs again this season.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're too solid defensively to be eliminated, and I think they've raised their bench above what it was last season.
Oh,
And
yeah.
really, the bench was the star of the show in the playoffs last year. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think this team is legitimately scary, and it's built in a way that they can sustain injuries to their core guys very easily.
Right.
You know, if LeBron misses 30 games, they're okay with that. All they have to do is roll into the playoffs with a spot, and they're happy. You know, I think this is pretty clearly for me the third best team in the West. Even with, you know, the age concerns with LeBron, even the injury concerns with AD, I don't see a team with this combination of depth and like high level talent. I hate the Lakers, but I gotta say I'm excited to see this team. I really like the way it's built.
You know, I really think they're built to have a great regular season. What I'm concerned about is come playoff time is where's the half-court offense going to come from? Because LeBron doesn't seem to be able to really, you know, do a lot. He's just not the creator that he used to be. And Davis, I don't know, you know, some nights he can, you know, look like a Hall of Famer, and other nights he could disappear. You know, I still think they're missing a piece. To get all the way to the championship, but regular season, they have the depth to really, really win a lot of games.
I think this particular style of play is historically very successful in the playoffs. Right? Even though they're missing that like primary scorer in half court sets, defensively they're built for just about any interaction with any other roster. They can go small, they can go big, they can go switch heavy, they can go rotation heavy, they can do a little bit of everything. I think ultimately, like, the answer in the half court is Austin Reeves. I mean, he was a stud in World Cup play. You know, when he first got the invite, people thought he was going to be on the select team, and it's like, no, he's on the team.
Yeah, he was like their sixth man.
Yeah,
and actually down the stretch in a lot of games, he was the guy on the court.
Yeah, he was the finisher in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I think, you know, like they will address a little bit of the talent level at point guard. I think the writing is on the wall for D'Angelo Russell. I mean, people were talking about it when he signed the contract. Like, he is signing this deal to be tradable, basically. That's why the Lakers brought him back. That's why they brought him back at the number that they brought him on, for the number of years that they brought him back for. He's going to probably be moved on to a situation where he can try and get back onto the sort of max deal, you know, trajectory that he was on before he went to the Lakers. I really think, like, they're going to be taking heavy looks at Drew Holiday in the next couple of weeks to see if they can make that deal happen.
Yeah, I can see that happening. All right, so we'll move on with the Southwest division, and only one, unlike the Pacific where everybody was above the 8th seed, only one team in this division was better than the 8th seed, and that was Memphis Grizzlies, who finished in first with 51 wins. So Memphis, of course, the big news is that John Morant is going to miss the first 25 games due to suspension. We're not going to really go into that. But then they traded Marcus Smart for Marcus Smart, left Dylan Brooks walk in free agency, but actually I think it was a part of a sign and trade. So they also have injury concerns. Brandon Clark, no one's really quite sure how much, if at all, he'll play this season. So that is another concern. As part of their wheeling and dealings, they got Josh Christopher from the Rockets in the Dillon Brooks deal. Not quite sure he's going to make the roster because right now they have too many players on standard contracts. And as I said, they got Marcus Smart. They also signed Derrick Rose as a kind of a, hopefully to be a mentor for Morant and also to kind of help fill in when Morant is out. So what do you make of Memphis? Some significant changes here. They're going to have to basically for close to a third of the season be without their best player.
Yeah, I mean, we're unfortunately going to see some regression from the Grizzlies this season, especially in terms of their win-loss record. But, I mean, 25 games being a pretty significant number of games to miss, especially your best player. There's still plenty of time for them to rally and get some energy back before the playoffs. I think what I'm maybe more worried about with this team is I feel like, we've seen the flashes from them, especially in the playoffs, but, I'm really starting to think that the loss of Dillon Brooks is kind of a stain on this team. I think the way that he played in the World Cup, and I think, it was a really rough playoff for him. It was a rough playoffs for him. I mean, we're talking like rock bottom as far as like media attention for a player. But since then, I think he's been nothing but a positive player for his team, with the Canadian national team. And really, like, the more I think about it, the more I feel like Dillon Brooks was like the emotional, like, leader of this team.
Well, that will fall to Smart now.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing in Marcus Smart, but I think Dillon Brooks has a higher ceiling as an individual player than Smart does. I think there were times where Dillon Brooks was the second best player on the roster in previous seasons. I mean, granted, he had some low lows, but his heights really propelled the team forward. Speaking of World Cup, we had a really rough offseason from Jaren Jackson. We're still waiting to see Steven Adams like fully recover from his injury. It's going to be a while until we see Ja. Until then, I mean, we've got a team that's going to be really held down by Desmond Bane, who hasn't been an overly productive primary ball handler in his career thus far. We're going to see a lot of Luke Kennard, a lot of Marcus Smart, and then a bunch of, wings that we haven't seen really stand out so far. I mean, a lot of people are still waiting on Zaire Williams to take a step forward.
Yep.
I would like to see David Roddy take a step forward.
Who had a horrible summer league.
A really rough summer. And then you got Jake LaRavia, who had a really rough rookie year,
but had a nice summer.
Yeah. And so...
And Santi Adama played well for Spain in World Cup.
Yep. And I think he's ultimately probably more of a center, but still.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you got a bunch of guys that clearly have talent, but I don't know how well this team really fits together, and it's going to be harder than people expect for them to weather the storm without Morant. It could be a really deep hole that they're going to have to dig themselves out of.
When I look at this roster without Morant, my first thought is, where's the offense coming from? Because Jaren Jackson's not a primary scorer. Desmond Bane really isn't a primary scorer. And Marcus Smart is certainly not. You don't want him being your number one scorer. So, I mean, yeah. And you lose, one of your best defenders in Brooks. So I don't know. Some of these young guys are going to have to step up. Kennard, Jake LaRivia, Zaire Williams, Sante Adama. Those guys, some of those guys are going to have to emerge. If if one or two of those guys can really emerge to be solid, consistent NBA players, then they should be okay. And then they could be a danger in the playoffs. I also worry about the shooting on this team because beside Kennard and Bain, some of these guys have shot well in the past, specifically LaRavia and Kennard. But we got to see that consistently. So yeah, I am concerned about this team as well. Definitely think they're going to be, take a step back. We shall see when Morant returns, but don't see them any championships for them this year for sure. All right, so now we'll move down to the ninth best, the second best team in the Southwest, and the ninth overall seed in the West, and that's the Pelicans with 42 wins. And of course, New Orleans, we have to begin and maybe end with Zion Williamson's health or desire to play or what have you. This team, when you look at the depth chart, it very much looks the same. Their top 10 players. Of course, they have some injury concerns beside Zion, and Jose Alvarado is currently sidelined with, I believe, an ankle. Trey Murphy is sidelined with a torn meniscus, and he could be out for quite some time. They did draft Jordan Hawkins, but he did not play well in Summer League. And they still have young talents that, it's too early to write them off, like Kira Lewis, Dyson Daniels, EJ Liddell, way down the depth chart. But ultimately, by the way, Brandon Ingram didn't play well in World Cup. So this team could be very dangerous with a healthy Zion and everybody else being healthy, but that's something, we have yet to really see. I think, what's the most he played? I mean, he's missed way more.
I think Zion's healthiest season was 30 games.
Wow.
It was in the range of 30 games, yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, he's actually, this is a crazy stat for you. He's played less over his first 3 seasons than Greg Oden.
Wow.
Think about that for a second.
That is insane.
I mean, the success of this team.
Actually, I'm gonna correct you. He played 61 games in
he did
2021, but in the other 2 seasons, he only played 24 his rookie season and only 29 last year. So he missed close to 60 games in 2 seasons, and in 1 season, he only missed 21, and still 21's a lot of games to miss. So there you go.
Rough.
Yeah. So what do you make of this team? I mean,
if Trey Murphy were healthy, I would like this team as a playoff hopeful. Without Trey Murphy and with, still not having seen a full healthy Zion season, I think they're going to miss the playoffs yet again. Pretty much the same team from last year, minus Trey Murphy, unfortunately. I heard the Pelicans head coach gave an interview where he was saying that CJ McCollum has been their best player since, guys have reported to, they start playing 5-on-5, friendly training camp, basically, which I think says more about Ingram and Zion's, availability and health and skill level at the moment than it does CJ McCollum. Of course, their coach was saying, this might be CJ's all-star year. I would love to see that. I think it would be great for their team, but ultimately, with they're kind of in the territory of the Clippers. I mean, until we see, Zion play a full season at his capability, this team is middle of the pack and will remain middle of the pack.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say Alvarado doesn't miss too much time. Let's say Murphy comes back after All-Star break, and let's say they get 60 games each out of Ingram and Williamson. I mean, if this team went into the playoffs healthy, what do you think?
I mean, last year I liked them as a sort of dark horse contender. But that was with, the possibility of Trey Murphy. That was with the added depth of Herb Jones. That's, that was with the idea that they would get EJ Liddell healthy, and they didn't get him last season. And this will be his rookie campaign. Ultimately, I think fit-wise, I still have questions about the roster, having seen them for, a year now. I think ultimately, I think they're at their best with Alvarado on the court. McCollum is important for them in that he's kind of like a balancing type of force in their lineup. He's a much more efficient scorer, I think, than Ingram really can be. And he can pass it just enough to kind of keep everybody else involved. Having seen Ingram play in World Cup, it really underlines some of the issues with his game to me, in that he doesn't really contribute in any way outside of scoring.
Mm-hmm.
And even in those moments, he needs the ball to do it. And if you're getting that healthy season from Zion, he's taken up a chunk of the ball handling role. And then too, like really, I think the sort of max ceiling for a Zion-led team is really him playing a lot of center. I think he really does fit as this like Charles Barkley-esque small ball power forward center combo. And they want to get up and down. And now I'm starting to question, well, how does Jonas Valanciunas fit into this? He's not an up and down type of center. I would want more of a rim runner or rim protector type guy.
Right.
Maybe somebody that can space the court a little bit better than Valanciunas. I don't know. I have concerns about how these guys fit together. There's a lot of talent, but I worry about what the max ceiling defense looks like. I worry what the max ceiling offense looks like. Until they figure out some of the answers to those questions and maybe make some moves to make it happen, kind of choose a direction. I don't really see them as that dark horse contender anymore, even with a healthy Zion.
Right. I think they, well, I don't know. I think given that the Zion hardly played last year, I think their number of wins is bound to go up. If this team is healthy for the playoffs, they're not going to be somebody you're looking forward to matching up with. But I don't see them, I think the best they could finish, overall is maybe fourth in the conference. Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to the Dallas Mavericks, who tanked toward the end and finished 11th in the conference with 38 wins. They were third in this division. And the Mavericks seem to be, every day we seem to hear that they're looking to trade for this guy or that guy, including Buddy Hield and Drew Holiday. So they bring back Kyrie. They bring back Luka. They brought in Grant Williams as part of the trade for, was that part of the KP? No, separate?
No, it was a sign and trade deal. They sent away Reggie Bullock and a couple of picks.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, they seemingly want to get rid of Tim Hardaway Jr., but he's still there. Jaden Hardy, people are saying that he's ready to make the next step. Josh Green looks so-so in World Cup play for Australia. They also added Rashawn Holmes to give them some minutes at center, power forward. They drafted Derek Lively II, who ultimately should be a great rim protector. They also drafted Olivier Maxence Prosper, small forward, power forward. Not sure how he's going to fit into the depth chart. He can contribute in a lot of ways. Good defender, long. They brought in Dante Exum. They brought him back from Europe, and he's going to, back up at point guard and shooting guard. So a lot of things have changed with this team, but it's still Luka, Kyrie, but Grant Williams gives them hope. Lively gives them hope for the future. Prosper as well. I think ultimately what they'd like to do is see Hardy or Josh Green supplant Tim Hardaway Jr. And right now they're still, stuck with Dwight Powell at center. Maybe Rashawn Holmes, boosts that area a little bit. I don't think Lively's ready to.
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be you got to have some patience with this Mavericks team. I think from where they started this offseason to where they are today, they've made some massive improvements in a positive direction to this roster. They've brought in more talent than they started the offseason with because they were pretty bare. Yeah. I mean, come playoff time, you really can't blame them for making the decision to tank out of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They weren't going to go that deep. It wouldn't have been worth the mileage that it would have put on Luka and Kyrie to get them in the playoffs. And ultimately they needed to retool. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is still kind of the guy that you have circled, on the roster that you would like to upgrade his position. I like Tim Hardaway Jr., but I think ultimately he's probably a little too small for what they're looking for from a wing. They want a little bit taller 3-and-D type guy in that spot. And eventually, they'll want to solidify that center position. It's still kind of a committee at this point.
Right.
But I mean, I'm from Tennessee. I'm a Tennessee guy. I love Grant Williams. I got to see, I saw him play in college. I lived on the same floor as him in school, and people forget that he was a back-to-back SEC Player of the Year. He was a huge part of what the Celtics did in their finals run 2 years ago. And I still believe that the fact that he was sort of wavering in and out of the rotation last season was a big part of why the Celtics sort of fell apart come playoff time. I think he brings you a different look defensively as a guy who can slot down to, guard guys like Giannis or Kevin Durant, play up against much taller, more talented offensive players. And, he might be a little bit outmatched, guarding primary, your Dame Lillard, your Steph Curry's. He's outmatched with that level of quickness, but just about everybody else, he can lock down. He's an All-NBA type defender. And I think people haven't seen the best of him offensively. He has a very strong post presence, very strong corner shooter. And he's a very high quality short roll passer.
Yep.
There's one guy in the league that I think fits next to Luka Doncic is Grant Williams. I think it's a very perfect pairing. We got to see what the Kyrie Luka combo looks like. With a full off season. I didn't love the fit last year. Yeah. It felt like a lot of my turn, your turn offense. hopefully, with a little bit of time to gel with one another, I would like to see a little bit of two-man game between them. I don't know what that looks like. I doubt, we're going to see a whole lot of Luka Doncic shedding screens, but if there's any way that we can introduce some variety, or maybe, God forbid, give Luka Doncic some easy looks, instead of playing ISO ball, I think that's going to vastly improve their offense. But I would look into that. He's a big guy. Why can't he play a little pick and roll? Why can't we force those matchups? I love what they did this offseason. This team's still a work in progress to me, though.
Yep.
Will they make the playoffs? I still feel like they're right on that borderline.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think, Rich?
No, I'm 100% in agreement. I think they made a ton of moves in the right direction. They're on the right path. They did the best with what they could, and but they're still, a borderline playoff team, and certainly not a championship team. So we got two more teams to go, and they were two of the worst teams in the league last year. And of course, that's the Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs. Both had 22 wins last year. We'll start with the Rockets. And the Rockets got some big new additions in Fred VanVleet at point guard, Dylan Brooks at wing. They also drafted Cam Whitmore. They drafted yes, right, and Amen Thompson at point guard, their future point guard. So I have some qualms with the way this team was built. I thought they could have done better, but I still think they've moved very much in the right direction. Oh, by the way, they also added Jacques Landale at center, which is a nice pickup for a backup center. And I'm forgetting somebody else that they brought in who I was pretty high on.
Jeff Green.
No, not really. There was another point I wanted to make. I can't remember. Oh, this is not a good point to make, but I mean, not a positive news. Kevin Porter is probably finished, not just with the Rockets, but in the league. At least his career is going to need a few years rehabilitation at a minimum. So Kevin Porter's out of the mix. And, they lost a lot of young, promising talent, and like Ty Washington and Garuba and Christopher, who they kind of just let walk. Or traded them away for not much at all. So that's where I kind of had a problem. You spend high draft picks on these guys, and now, after a year or two, you're just going to toss them away. I didn't particularly care for that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it throughout the summer, but we all kind of had at HPP some mixed feelings about the direction that they chose this offseason, going out and getting VanVleet, spending the money on Brooks. But the more I really look at the roster, and you talk about the talent that's going out the door, I'm okay with it. I love the talent that they have in-house already. I mean, Jabari Smith, another year of development for him. He's looking much more comfortable with the ball in his hands, much more capable on the defensive end. And if you're going to combo like such a strong defensive forward with a type of center, it's hard to do better than Alperen Sengun, who reportedly grew over the course of the last year. Sengun is, I mean, if you haven't gotten a chance to watch him play, and maybe you're a Jokic fan, he really is like budget Nikola Jokic. He makes some of the similar like crazy passes, silly floaters that really should be blocked, but he's very adept at making. Rich, how I feel about Tari Eason as a prospect. I love Tari Eason. And you still got Jalen Green. I mean, we still don't know what he is at the NBA level. We know he can score the ball. kind of like Zach LaVine, we're waiting to see if he can score the ball at an efficient enough rate to be sort of like a playoff contributor. And Amen Thompson has looked excellent so far.
Mhm.
Not to mention Cam Whitmore.
Right.
The young talent.
Eason and Jabari Smith had fantastic summer leagues. They
So
didn't play a lot, but when they did, they looked top notch.
They looked great. The youth on this team is top notch. I mean, really top notch.
And you have several players, probably, Thompson, Green, Eason, Smith, all have potential to be all-stars.
Easily. Oh, I totally agree.
And maybe even Whitmore and Sengun. So there you go. And when we know what Dylan Brooks can do, we know what Van Fleet can do. So
yeah, I mean, like it's on the surface, it's like, what are you guys doing? Why are you spending this money? But and people have been making fun of the Rockets owner for thinking like, oh, this is win now time. But I appreciate the aggressiveness because they've got all of these really talented guys on rookie deals for years to come. Like, why not try and be competitive early while these guys are still developing, learning how to play with one another? Why should I bring in all these draft picks, these high talented guys, if I'm asking them to lose every year? I think it's a really smart move at the end of the day, because in bringing in guys like Van Vliet and Brooks, you're going to have veterans that can push your young guys, can show them how to play the right way, and you're going to have a higher ceiling as a team. So they're going to get that experience that they need to really be able to excel on their own long after guys like Van Vliet are gone. I genuinely think this team could actually make the playoffs.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I too think overall this team has definitely moved in a positive direction. So my question to you was, can they make the playoffs? Can they actually make it? I think they might just.
They can.
I think they might just get in there. Yeah.
I really think they can. I mean, you've got, especially looking at their division, like that's a chunk of games against some pretty unstable teams. They're going to have a couple games against Memphis, a couple games against the Pelicans, who we're talking looking shaky.
Yeah.
With injuries and suspension.
And of course the Spurs, who are nearly as young as them, if not as young,
Yeah. And also, I gotta say, this team was honestly looking for a way to get rid of Kevin Porter to begin with.
Yeah.
So
right. But you would have liked it. You would have. You would
been nice to trade him.
Yeah, you'd like to trade him, get something for him, and certainly for his girlfriend's sake, who was injured in the whole debacle. All right, so let's talk about the Spurs, who also won 22 games last year, and of course, Victor Wembanyama was the number 1 overall pick, and he is penciled in to start at center. They got some backup pieces in various deals. They bring in Reggie Bullock. They re-signed Sandro Memu Kalishvili to they upgraded him from a 2-way to a regular contract, and he could get some significant minutes this year. They drafted CD Sissoko, probably not ready yet, still, like 19 years old. They also got Chetty Osman from the Cavs. So they got a lot of mediocre depth pieces here. Blake Wesley, still doesn't look like he gets it at point guard. And
this team sucks, Rich.
Yeah.
They suck.
I'm trying to be positive.
I can't. They suck. I mean, like, I can't believe. I mean, this is how you know it was an echo chamber with Wemby this offseason. People were like, why don't they trade for Dame? They could be a playoff team. Like, no. This team is not. They're so far from ready to compete for anything. I mean, like, even just the talent level. I mean, Trey Jones is going to be their starting point guard. their starting point guard.
Right. And Devontae Graham, who got in trouble in the offseason, he's the number 2 option. And after that, you have Wesley, who kind of looks clueless when it comes to being a point guard.
Oh, totally. I mean, yeah, there's not enough ball handling here. I mean, I like
enough
Keldon
explosive
Johnson.
Scoring, not enough shooting.
No, and I think no matter what,
you do have a lot of athletes, though.
Yeah. Well, and too, like with a coach like Greg Popovich, I feel like the Spurs have always played above their means from a talent perspective. Like, I like Keldon Johnson, but I like Keldon Johnson as like your 5th starter. Maybe your
4.
6th man.
Maybe your number 4.
Maybe 4. Yeah. I like Devin Vassell, but I'd like him a whole lot more off the bench.
Oh, me too. You
know, I love Sohan. Love his upside, but I don't know what he really is.
He's ultimately a defender and a rebounder, but I don't know if he's ever going to be a scorer.
I mean,
and that's what they have too many of those guys.
One-handed free throws last year, and it helped his percentage. Like, that's not necessarily encouraging about his ceiling,
right? And that's my point about these guys. There's so many, Sohan, Vassell. There's so many of them are limited offensively. That's why I actually think Branham and Mamukelashvili might emerge to be primary scorers for this team, along with Victor.
Oh, you're barking up my tree, Rich. I am a Mamukelashvili fan. I always have been. I loved him out of Seton Hall. I don't think people have really gotten a chance to see him play a whole lot because
I saw him play a ton in college.
Yeah, I loved him in college. Just a unique player. I think like ultimately he's a guy that could kind of have a career trajectory that looks a lot like Markkanen. Where like
right.
He plays this one style in college, comes to the league, and everybody's like, you can't really quite play that way here. And then he tries to fit in as a small ball center. He tries to play some more, power forward type role, but really he's a left-handed ball handler, primary scorer that's 6'11". And can give you a little rebounding, little shot blocking, but really that's what he is. He's like a pick and roll player.
Good passer, good shooter.
Yeah, I mean he's awesome with the ball in his hands. You didn't get to see him a whole lot at the Bucks. There's too much of a logjam in the front court for him to really get minutes.
Right.
I think not to say there's not a logjam in San Antonio. There really is. There's a lot of guys vying for minutes down there, but
nobody stands out. The upside is limited for a lot of these guys.
Totally. I think Sohan's going to play a lot. I think he's got a little bit more upside than maybe people thought coming into the league. I mean, the billing with him was like, this incredible defender, rebounder, hustle guy,
athlete too.
Yeah. And I think he's got a little bit more juice as a ball handler than people thought. But even that isn't like a huge, boost. I wouldn't be shocked to see Mamukelashvili starting, playing like a lot of heavy wing.
Or they do offense, defense,
Yep.
I just think ultimately Branham or Mamu they're gonna have to start to give this team some more scoring punch.
Yeah, they need it. I think, but I like the foundation of like what their defense could be as the team gets older. Like, I love Zach Collins as like a guy to just throw out there to piss someone off, and collect a couple of fouls a game. Like, but I love the pairing of Wembanyama and Sohan as like a long-term front court. I think they really fit well together. Defensively, they're going to really complement each other. But down the line, I think initially they're going to get abused by just about every team.
Yeah,
I'm not like Victor Wembanyama is like the glass vase with like the wrapper around it that says "handle with care." That's how I'm looking at his rookie season. Just like.
Yeah.
Please, God, don't break his confidence this year because it's going to be.
And that's
rough.
what I'm worried about, expectations. Because, I mean, for example, like I haven't really given a lot of thought to Rookie of the Year, but I know for a fact that I think Chet's going to have a much better season than Victor.
For sure. He's got a better team.
Right.
He's got a year of experience under his belt in the gym to be prepared. You know, I mean, we'll see. I think there's going to be some incredible highlights for the Spurs team, but God, they suck. They're not good.
All right, and we'll end on that note. So, folks, we're gonna make our NBA predictions the week before the season starts. So in between now and then, we'll be doing a lot of the college conference previews, but we'll still be having our NBA notebooks every week. So I just want to, as always, I want to thank our listeners. I want to thank our special guest, Marko Zarkovic, coming from Germany and giving us a unique perspective on World Cup and Team USA. And if you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back next week with a special guest, and we'll talk more about college hoops and more about the NBA. Any final thoughts, Cameron?
The Spurs suck.
All right.
It's always a good time.
All right. We will see you next week.